Hello, everybody, and welcome one and all back to our segment Fundamentalist Fails. It's a Friday. Usually I love. Why am I blurry? Why am I blurry? Hold on one sec. Thank you. Thank you. Welcome back to Fundamentalist Fails. It is a Friday for me. It may be Thursday for you, but it's Friday for me, and it's my favorite day because we get to look at the silly antics of religious fundamentalists from all over the globe. That's what the internet gives us. It gives us religious fundamentalists from all over the globe with all of its downsides and upsides. So glad you can join me, but I did get a request. I think it was from 1 by land, 2 by sea, 3 by air. I'm not 100% sure who recommended it. I do apologize. Please tell me if you did the recommendation for this one. They suggested Doug Wilson, and quite frankly, I find this guy frightening. I find him very frightening. I find him incredibly frightening. He is a Christian fundamentalist who is a young earther and heavily influenced American politics as we know it for Christian nationalism. He wrote a book called Mere Christian Nationalism. He is heavily influenced Pete Hegseth, who is part of his denomination, apparently not his church, but his denomination. And he has influenced the current thought about Christian nationalism a lot. And I truly believe this is, if nothing else is, this is a wolf in sheep's clothing. This is a dangerous guy. He is horrifying in his beliefs. And I kind of will explain why and what this brand of Christian nationalism will inevitably lead to. But I think that a lot of people and I have some thoughts about him, that he couches his language very, very carefully to try to appeal to as many people as possible. And it's a problem. It's a problem because if you follow the logical chain of thought that he goes down, you get to a very, very dark place. You get to a place where you have what he calls a Protestant utopia, where really the only people with any power are Protestants. And so I got a CNN interview of him, and I know I usually look at the wacky, but to my mind, this sort of goes from out of wacky and into actual frighteningly bad. The some of the claims I did watch a lot more than I grabbed, kind of thing, if that makes sense. But he he's absolutely a shocker. His ideas on who should be able to vote are shocking. His ideas on who should be accepted into society are shocking. So look, if you are having a bad day, or you don't feel up to watching, there's going to be some stuff in here that I will find highly objectionable. You may find highly objectionable. So if you don't think you can sort of hang in there for a guy who is that bad, maybe watch something else. Maybe take a chill. Maybe cuddle your cat or dog and feel a bit better. It's not for the lighthearted. But I got the CNN interview with him, and I really want to go through that because the journalist did a good job, but I don't think a great job. I think there's things that we need to press these people on and go, okay, what is the culmination of what you're trying to do? Like, where are you trying to get to? Because I don't think anybody except for his particular brand of creationist is going to like that answer. And I do want to point out that people like this, and like the orthobros and the fundamentalists and these extreme right conservatives, they will try to appropriate all of Christianity for their fundamentalist movement. And most Christians aren't like this, right? Most Christians don't want to see, for instance, women lose votes, for instance, and that's one of the things that he talks about. He doesn't want women to vote. Most people aren't on board with that. They would actively resist that idea in the marketplace of ideas. But he tries to sort of go, oh, well, we're majority Christian, so we should go along with what my ideas are, which is kind of a false equivalence. Because just because you're majority Christian doesn't mean that all Christians agree with you. Even not all Protestants agree with him. It's a very broad category. So I was trying to get some statistics on how much the fundamentalist Protestants are actually in America, because it's about 60% Christian kind of thing, or maybe slightly higher. But sort of the extreme right Protestant that this guy is, they're not the majority. Another thing I do have to mention, currently we're having a cyclone where I am. Yes, a cyclone. A cyclone's basically just an opposite rotating hurricane. Okay, so if you're used to hurricanes, this one just goes in the opposite direction because it's in the southern hemisphere, basically. So if you want to know what a cyclone is, it's just a hurricane rotating in the opposite direction. I think that hurricanes rotate clockwise, isn't it? Clockwise? What direction do hurricanes rotate? Counterclockwise. Okay, so they go counterclockwise. Cyclones go clockwise. So it's because of the Coriolis effect of the Earth's rotation. Very, very easy to understand. But yeah, we do currently have incoming cyclone. So if I go out, you'll probably know why. I'll be fine. But this is Doug Wilson. The other thing is I did have a goal that I did on my Wednesday or Tuesday night, if you're from the US, that wanted to reach a certain amount of super chats to do a gaming stream. So I will be doing that tomorrow night or tomorrow morning, depending on where you are. But let's get started. This is the interview with CNN. And I do have another clip that I want to show, and I'll show it because it will show where we're leading to when we follow this train of thought.
What makes this community here in Moscow so unique?
You can't make...
Okay, so this is Moscow. I think it's in Idaho. He's from, so I don't think Moscow is from Russia. It's definitely, city in Idaho. So it's basically a city in Idaho, but just saying.
Good omelets with rotten eggs. It doesn't matter how good the recipe is. It doesn't matter how good the kitchen is. It doesn't matter how good the cook is. If people aren't walking with God, then it's going to come out bad.
What would have happened if you're...
Yeah, so the Doug Wilson's one that thinks secularism has failed. So he's saying if you don't have God in your society, then it's going to automatically comes out bad. Now, that is not what we've seen from the very secular Scandinavian and European countries. It hasn't just come out bad. And I do want to separate the ideas of, he thinks that secularism has failed, right? Like, he thinks that secularism's absolutely failed, and it hasn't, right? Like, what we're seeing is a failure of capitalism, and capitalism and secularism are not the same thing. The other thing is that in the US, the religious people, like the Project 2025 people, the what is it, the institute behind it, I've had a mental blank, who did Project 2025? Heritage Foundation. Yeah, Heritage Foundation. Things like the Heritage Foundation has they have sort of attacked secularism and really degraded it to the point where it's not secularism anymore. When you get to the point where your president is having prayer meetings in the Oval Office and sort of people are laying hands on him and praying, and the military is giving exhortations of we've got God is on our side and we've got to do this for Jesus and things like that, then you have moved way away from secularism. That is not a secular government anymore. It is not a government independent of religion. It is a government fueled by religion. It is a government that has, maybe not officially, but definitely ostensibly, for all appearances, has embraced Christianity as a singular religion that the country is part of. This guy doesn't think that America is a secular country, and that is just wild.
Kids didn't want to follow you.
So this was something, again, that my dad learned from the Apostle Paul, but there were 4 of us growing up in my...
Just 1 second. I don't know if that's too soft. I will try and boost it, maybe. Can I boost this thing? Come on, give me some love.
Dad's household, and we all knew that if any one of us walked away from the faith, my dad would step down from ministry.
So you just living as a practicing Christian isn't enough.
That's wild to me. That's wild to me. If someone stepped away from the faith, your father would step down. Maybe he said that. I have doubts that they would. I've never seen a pastor with a child that's gone astray or a child that's deconverted just give up his ministry. Very little causes a pastor to give up their ministry. So I have doubts about that.
For you.
It's not enough, no.
What does that look like, though, in America ruled by Christ, which is what you want?
Yeah. Well, the most noticeable things right out of the gate would be things that aren't going on anymore. We wouldn't have Clown World. We wouldn't have Drag Queen Story Out.
So basically, his idea of Clown World is sort of the progressive nation that accepts all people, cherishes our differences, people having rights to live their lives as long as they're not harming anybody. That's what he considers. He calls it Clown World. And this is sort of what I'm saying, that what these people have done is they've come in and blamed all of society's failings upon progressivism and secularism. And, it's just... it's a problem, because the failings that our society has and the failings of capitalism are not the failings of secularism or progressivism or anything like it. It's a failure of capitalism. It is and what is Storytime Drag Hour, right? Like, what actual harm can you demonstrate that it's caused? Okay, that's really what I wonder, because I think John Stewart said it best, and that is that the number one cause of death in America among young people, among teens, is not Storytime Drag Hour, right? It's not. The number one cause of death among teens is guns. Yet these people will attack something completely, like some vague notion of, oh, well, it's decaying society in some vague way, and completely ignore the leading cause of death for young people. Completely ignore it. Just don't care. That's in order to have a free society, you've got to lose some people. And that's the problem. They're basically saying, hey, society isn't going the way that I want. And look, every country has problems. But instead of going, like, what reasonable consequences will happen if we implement this kind of stuff? Or what is the leading cause? Can we find causation and address that cause? Instead, they are going, well, I don't like Storytime Drag Hour. So that's the cause of all of our ills. And I think that people in America are finding out that clamping down on all this stuff, clamping down on immigrants, clamping down on, trans people, is not solving their problems. And the reason why it's not solving their problems is because it was never the cause of their problems in the first place. That is the problem that the fundamentalists are going to find out. Because they've gone, hey, we can fix America. All we need to do is attack these people, prevent these people from speaking, marginalize these people, bring Christ back to the fore, and that'll solve all our problems. And it has solved exactly nothing. Nothing. So, we've got to wake up to that reality that unless we actually identify the cause, and these popularists and these people, they're just screaming what they don't like and dog whistling for what they don't like and expecting people to join them. And people will. The problem is it won't solve anything because they're not actually lining up the problem with the cause of the problem. Like we all know why the capitalism has reduced us to sort of not being able to make ends meet, people struggling. It is because of the incredible wealth inequality that capitalism has produced in this day and age. Like, let's face it. Putting Jesus at the forefront is not going to solve that problem. It's not.
We wouldn't have pride parades. We wouldn't have abortion on demand. Those things would be gone.
Well, I don't think you have abortion on demand. I think that it's a process that they go through. He's talking about voluntary abortion, basically. Like this is the language that he uses, like clown show, abortion on demand, and things like that. It's coloring it in a certain way, and so his rhetoric is fully on display here. He is dog whistling to a certain audience, but what problems has that actually caused, right? Like, what problem in society are we addressing by getting rid of pride parades? Like, what's that going to solve? What's that going to do? Are you suddenly going to be able to afford a house because pride parades are gone? Of course not. Are you going to suddenly, there's going to be less crime because pride parades are gone? No. Then what are you doing? It doesn't hurt anybody. So what are you doing? Interestingly enough, he would not accept any celebration from any other religion either. Like, if you wanted to celebrate Ramadan, right? Like in my university, we used to have a Ramadan week. This is, and it was just festival of lights and stuff. It was innocuous. You didn't have to do anything. There were Muslim students that prayed and stuff, but you didn't have to. And it was just, hey, this is a celebration of that the Muslims do, that you're welcome to join in if you want. Much like Christmas. We celebrated, there was a Christmas thing as well, all around the city kind of thing. Like, you're welcome to join in, you don't have to. Like, I don't get the big deal. It's not a big deal. But to him, that is blasphemy and should be clamped down on and made illegal.
That would be, boy, this is different. So the thing that a lot of the people in the middle, let's call them normies, people who are they're not particularly theological, and they're not hard left either. They're just, I just want to live a normal life.
Yeah, I would call them moderates instead of normies. I would call them moderates, but yeah, the problem is that what they have done is all of those normies have been very upset with the government, and rightfully so. Rightfully so. The government's gone hand in hand with the corporate world to create a inequity of wealth that is absolutely destroying people. And I totally get it. I totally understand it. I'm right on board with that. Sucks. But they've sort of lied to them and said, hey, we're going to implement, we're going to go back to the time of, making gay people illegal and public decency laws and all of this kind of stuff. We're going to bring back these sanctimonious, religious, oppressive laws, and that's going to make everything better. And it hasn't. That's the problem, because it was never the cause of these problems in the first place. So, the fundamentalists are going to have a big problem going into the future, where they have told everybody, hey, do these things, society will be righteous, and then everything becomes better. And it hasn't. It's gotten worse. Because, like it or not, those things were never the cause of our problems in the first place. Pride parades were never causing overseas wars that drain the economy of any kind of budget and cause oil prices to go through the roof. It wasn't pride parades doing that. It may have been pride or ego or some form of aggression on the part of our leaders, but it was not pride parades doing that. But they have sort of said, hey, if we do these things, we will have the glory days of America. And people are quickly finding out that is not the case. The normies you're talking about, they're gonna feel lied to, because of course they are.
That's so wrong. The last 5 years has really unsettled them a great deal, because Clown World is not a livable place to bring up kids. It's just not. And a lot of the recoil.
Clown World is, so this is the rhetoric that he uses, Clown World, for progressive, liberalism. Because don't forget, this guy basically does want a established religion to control everything. And I want you to notice that he, apart from this, and you can tell that he is absolutely contemptuous of progressive liberal values like equality, equity, inclusion, diversity. He is absolutely contemptuous of it because he calls that clown world, right? By any measurement, this guy would look at Sweden, Norway, Denmark, Netherlands, Belgium, France, and say that's a clown world. But they have very happy people there. They are very happy, right? So we can't just look at everything in the secular world, right? Like wealth inequality and lowering birth rates and doing all of this stuff, and just say, hey, that's secularism, because it's not. Secularism doesn't actually it's not a thing that promotes any kind of political or economic value or anything of the sort. It just says that, hey, the country should be, the state rather, should be independent from any religion. It doesn't mean you can't be in the state and have a religion, not at all. But the state should be independent of it. It should treat everybody with the same rights and accord everybody the same rights, irrelevant of religion. And from my position as a secular humanist, a humanism sort of says, hey, we shouldn't ban things if it doesn't cause anybody any harm. And so this whole nebulous thing of, well, my children are going to suffer if I allow them to watch a pride parade, we know from the science that being gay is not something that you choose to do. Right? It's not something that you choose. It's something that you're either born as or you're not. Same with being trans. It's not something that you choose. You're either born with it or you're not. And that's not something that we've just gone, oh, well, we're going to just say that. No, this is like, there are studies around it.
or the reaction that has happened. And a lot of the reason we're getting the attention we're getting is people are hungry for answers that don't just whitewash it, that don't sugarcoat it. And as I'm fond of saying, it's Christ or chaos. And people say, yeah, looking around, that seems to be the case. And
the problem comes that, so when you're talking about Christ or chaos, that's a false dichotomy for a start, because you can have Christ at the center of your religion like they did in the early church, and it's still chaos, right? People disagreeing over stuff, people arguing over who's got the right doctrine. It's still chaos. It was very chaotic in the early church before, they actually solidified the Bible. Like, some people believed in this gospel, but not that one. And, it was all over the place. So that is not a true dichotomy. You can have Christ and still have chaos. That is not true. Secondly, it's very easy to think, oh, well, the world's in chaos. There's no order. Everything's, all over the place, because you watch the news and you kind of go, well, I'm only seeing the bad stuff. I'm only seeing the chaos. That's all what it's like all around the world. And it generally isn't, right? Like, it generally isn't. I think that the main thing that things like Fox News and these evangelical guys, they've convinced people that the world is falling apart. Like, the entire world is falling apart. And I don't think it is. And I think that they have done more to make the world fall apart than anybody else. I mean, look at the damage Trump has done. Look at the chaos. So one of the things that I'm going to kind of predict, and I think that will happen, is that at some point in the future, we're all going to turn around and say, Trump was terrible. He absolutely... he fucked things up. He fucked things up completely. And it was horrible and terrible and, all of this thing. History will not look kindly on this person. But I think that what the evangelicals do is they'll turn around and go, well, Trump wasn't really a Christian. He's not one of ours. He wasn't acting in Christian values. What I would like in the future is that we do not let them off the hook, right? He was their guy. This guy supported Trump. The Heritage Foundation basically wrote his entire plan for Trump. We cannot let them get off the hook by saying, hey, well, he had nothing to do with us. He wasn't even really a Christian, which I do believe he isn't really a Christian, but he is the product of Christian fundamentalist nationalism. Right? Like, Christian nationalism produced Trump, and we cannot let them off the hook for that, because I guarantee you at some point in the future, he's going to say, nope, he wasn't ours. He wasn't ours. He was not acting like a Christian. He's not us. No, don't let him off the hook. He's their guy. They put him there. They wanted him to act in their values.
You're seeing a big expansion in membership in these last few years, really since COVID, right?
Yes, since 2019, our church community here has doubled in size. And during the height of COVID, it was like a refugee column, people moving here, chased here by blue state governors, chased here by COVID restrictions, chased here by pastors and elders who flaked on them, who closed their church down. And people, a lot of Christians were discovering that they did not have the Christian leadership that they thought they had.
Yeah, so this guy's all on board with the fake COVID. It's not real. It was very real. It was very real and very happening. People died. A lot of people died. Worldwide, an incredible amount of people died. And if you knew somebody working in emergency, my sister-in-law was heading an emergency unit. It was no joke. Okay, it wasn't a game. It wasn't a fake thing. It wasn't anything. It was a real thing that people died constantly from. Right? It's just you don't see it because the government, basically what they did is, number one, it was the Trump government. He downplayed it. Oh, it'd be gone by next whatever. It's absolutely nothing. But it was the institutions that we have, the medical institutions, that took care of it all, and then you went, well, it's not a big thing. If you were an emergency nurse, it wasn't just a big thing. It was a critical episode of medical history. Like, this is the problem, that you don't deal with it. You're a pastor. You go, oh well, my flock's fine. George got sick, but that's okay. Florence lost her husband, but Stan was old anyway. He was probably going to drop off the perch anytime now. The problem comes that you're not seeing the thousands and thousands of people going through the emergency room, some needing ventilators and breathing stuff so they can breathe, and some literally dying. But the emergency staff did. But you don't listen to them. You don't listen to the experts who work in the medical field. They don't listen to any of those people. And that's why there's currently a measles epidemic breaking out in America. America's about to lose its measles elimination status. Make America measles again. It's crazy. And the thing is that these people support Trump, but even Trump goes, yes, the COVID was a serious thing. You know why he does? He almost died from it. He had to be taken to Walter Reed because he got COVID and he was in a bad way. So that guy knows that it was a real problem because, at one point he was critical. He was like in trouble. It was the doctors that saved him.
They thought shepherds were supposed to protect the sheep. And when the pressure came, it didn't happen.
Yeah, and this is similar to the argument I got in with Andrew Wilson. You know what? All Wilsons seem to be terrible. I'm really sorry. Anybody with the last name of Wilson, I'm gonna meet you. I'm gonna have to overcome that prejudice against all people with the last name of Wilson, because they're all idiots. Like, his sort of thing was, oh, in Australia they put you in lockdown. They had these lockdowns and these mask mandates and all of this oppressive totalitarian stuff, and it's like, yeah, while we didn't have vaccines, sure, and a majority of people was in favor of it, and the bluster is, oh, but it's oppressive and it's thing. It's like, yeah, but you know how you can tell the difference? They're over. We're not still being oppressed, as you put it. It was temporary. That's the whole point. Like, we don't need them anymore, so we don't have them anymore. And his whole thing was, you are still in lockdown because you can't buy guns. Yeah, we can. We just need licenses for them. So the guy's a fucking moron, and this guy's a fucking moron. And not Owen Wilson. No, you're right, Kip. I got to point this out. Wow.
Would you define yourself as a Christian nationalist?
Yes.
And how do you define that?
Well, mostly because I much prefer it to the names I usually get called.
How do you define that? Is it you are a Christian and you want this nation to be a Christian nation?
I'm a Christian, and I'm an American who loves this country. Mm-hmm. So put those two things together, and
yeah, that is not the definition of nationalism. No. So he's really hedging here, and I want to point out how sort of dodging he's dodging the question, what is a Christian nationalist? Because a nationalist is not somebody who loves their country. That's a patriot. A nationalist is somebody who believes in the centralization of that country into a hierarchy. Nationalism's kind of, people are like, oh, you're a fascist. And nationalism is not fascism, but it definitely is further towards fascism than it is democratic or libertarian or what am I thinking of? Liberal, basically. So nationalism is a loyalty to the state above everything else, basically. So when you're talking about Christian nationalism, usually you're talking about the nationalization of a Christian religion and the loyalty to that religion over everything else, right? Like, so a loyalty to God over everything else. I have not seen that word, theonomist. Is that like somebody who believes that a theology should theonomist should like influence all? Old Moses Testament Mosaic law, validity of Mosaic law. Oh yes, he is a reconstructionist. Absolutely, he's a biblical reconstructionist. So he thinks that the laws of the Bible should be reconstructed in modern form. Yes. Yeah, no, absolutely not. No, absolutely. No, I totally agree with you. Not all Christians are nationalists. Absolutely. Absolutely. Most Christians, an overwhelming amount, do not support nationalism. The problem is that the Christian nationalists, they kind of have been doing, especially the Heritage Foundation guys, these what we used to call the alt-right, and I'm going to bring back that term because it is the alt-right. They are trying to bring back, and they sort of have lied to everybody, saying that the reason why the world's getting into a worse place is because of these progressive ideologies that we hate. You know, it's the trans in sport that is the reason why our nation is failing, and that has not been the case. Like that has not affected anything. You can ban the trans from the military, hasn't changed anything because it was never the cause of the problem. Right? But yeah, I agree. The problem also is that people like this, the Wilsons, I'll call them, they always try to say, well, this is a Christian nation, we're the Christians, so you should go with my ideology. The problem is that most Christians do not share this man's ideology. Okay, I want to make that perfectly clear. But they want to appropriate all of Christianity for their far-right, sort of demagoguery, for their far-right ideology of theocracy kind of thing. And it does verge on theocracy, in my opinion. Shakira Law. I'm not sure what Shakira Law is. It sounds thing. One by Land. Were you the one that suggested Doug Wilson? I couldn't remember who did it, but whoever it was, thank you. And I dislike you because you made me watch this guy. But yeah, so Sharia law is most Muslims don't believe in an implementation of Sharia law, or they believe in a Sharia law so watered down that we wouldn't even, it would be almost indistinguishable from secular law. Most Muslims. Not all of them, most of them. So it is a bit like that, yes. Except he doesn't like gay people. He doesn't like trans people. He doesn't like women having any kind of say. He really is an obnoxious, horrible person. And as Kip rightfully and very present, very, he sort of stole my thunder because I was going to go into, this guy wrote a pamphlet about how slaves can be happy under their masters. So he does have, and I think that he does, he kind of skirts around this point kind of thing. He sort of says, oh, slavery, in antebellum slavery was horrible, it was awful and stuff. Yeah, but that doesn't mean you're against slavery. Like, he really does skirt, and he chooses his words very, very carefully. He brought out a pamphlet, Southern Slavery as It Was. This guy Wilkins that he wrote it with, he wrote that slavery produced in the South a genuine affection between races that we believe we can say never existed in any nation before the war or since. Yeah. So he's sort of a slavery apologist.
Since I believe that my Christianity is not something that's to be believed by me behind my eyes and between my ears, it's a public truth.
What do you say to people?
Yes, but in order for others to accept something you claim to be a public truth, you've got to demonstrate that it is in fact true. And that's where this falls down. Because when it is a matter of faith, and liberalism has clear roots from John Locke, from Rousseau, from all of these thinkers of the Enlightenment, where the idea behind secularism was that the state is run independent of any religion and is up to each their own conscience to find that truth of religion wherever they find it. And that's fine, right? Like if you want to believe in these things, but if you don't, you in some way have to demonstrate the truth of this. And people like this guy never want to. They want to say that their religion is best for society without actually demonstrating A, why it is true, or why it's better.
Different faiths all over the world who
Well,
don't believe that and have a different God, a different understanding of life
Yeah.
and how we all came here.
Yeah, I would say let's have a Bible study. Let's talk about it. Depending on
Why would we have a Bible study? If we want to investigate life and where we came from, you're basically saying, well, let's look at the Bible. Like, I don't know if this guy's a pre-sup. I've only gagged at some of his stuff before. But why would you go to the Bible automatically? It's because he presupposes Christianity is the truth already. Let's have a Bible study if we disagree. Don't forget, he is a young earther. He thinks that the earth is 6,000 years old. I have watched some other interviews and he said, yeah, I'm a young earther. I think that the earth is 6,000 years old. In the face of all available evidence, which is wild. And he's like, oh, you'll probably put me next to flat earthers. Yeah, that is just scientifically inaccurate. That is ridiculous. Wow.
what they've heard, I would want to assure them that the fact that we differ over who God is or differ over ultimate reality does not give me warrant to persecute you. So we're going to talk about this because the Christian faith does not advance by the sword. The Christian faith advances by preaching, the sword of the Spirit, planting churches, preaching, declaring, etc.
Okay, so this is sort of misleading. So he's basically saying, hey, we're not going to advance Christianity by violence, right? And you sort of go, oh, well, that's nice. He's not talking about once Christianity becomes established as the central dominating force in a society. So he's saying he has no idea, like he basically has no intention of going up against secular authority, right? Because he knows where that will end. It will end with him in a jail cell for, obviously violating Constitution, say First Amendment, the prohibition of establishment of religion. It will end up badly for him. So he's basically saying, hey, we don't advance by the sword. We have no intention of doing that. The question comes, what will he do once he's there? And I found this really interesting conversation between him and a Catholic, right? Like, so this is another Christian, mind you. And somebody mentioned earlier he talked to Sam Harris. I did see part of that, but it wasn't sort of relevant to the CNN conversation. I will do another Fundamentalist Fails on this guy because I think this is important. Just be aware, this guy's bad for my mental health. This guy's a shocker. Like, he is a shocker. So this is with it was on Dad Saves America. He's a Catholic, right? But just check this out. And I wanna sort of juxtapose these two ideas that he has. That number one, Christianity doesn't advance with a sword, right? It's got no non-violent.
Carrying an image of the Virgin Mary down Main Street, no, right? So
what about the
basically
Eucharist? What about the Eucharist? What about a Eucharistic procession?
That's a new one. I would.
Okay, the Eucharistic procession is not a new thing, my guy. It's not new. In fact, it predates your entire your entire denomination. Like, seriously, it predates. Like, what are you talking? Eucharist procession. Like, it's just a celebration of Christianity. It's just, carried through the streets. Look, as a secularist, right? As a secular person, I can go, yeah, have your Eucharistic procession. You get the permits from the government. They treat everybody equally. If you wanna carry stuff down the street, then by all means. No skin off my nose. If the flying spaghetti monster people want to do something, if the Pride Parade wants to be out there doing it, yeah, absolutely. Treat them all the same. It's not a problem. If the evangelicals want to walk through the streets with a cross, yeah, if they get a permit, sure. It doesn't bother me at all. That's the wonderful thing about secularism. As long as you're not hurting anybody, right? As long as you're not advocating hate speech or hurting anybody or causing harm to other people of society, you go nuts. But what he wants to do is we're allowed to have Protestants down Main Street doing their thing because that's the state religion, and the Catholics can go get effed.
Say, probably not. It would depend on what was being done around it, how it was being conducted. But basically, public displays of idolatry, what the Protestant foundation of the law would consider to be idolatry, would not be allowed. So you wouldn't have a Hindu procession with a Hindu god.
Yeah, I would say sure. I don't mind a Hindu procession. I'd probably watch a Hindu. I've never seen a Hindu procession before. I wouldn't mind seeing one in my life. I've got no problem with it whatsoever. That's the whole thing about secularism. It doesn't say you can't have any religious association anywhere in society. It just says that it doesn't enter the state. So, a prayer in government is not a thing. Like, we're not going to have prayers and things. That's the whole point about secularism. People get to practice any religion they want without the state coming in and going, no, unless they are actively doing harm to other people. And then we have to say, hey, that's not okay, because your free practice of religion is infringing on other people's rights to autonomy, to liberty, to happiness. We've got to show that.
Wouldn't have a procession of the Virgin Mary. But let me run ahead to anticipate something else. And that is, what we're talking about is something that I would envision as being possible 500 years from now, 250 years from now. And it would only be possible as the result of evangelism, persuasion, broad Christian consensus.
Right. So that's what he's talking about. And this is the things that the author bros, for instance, do. Right. The Andrew Wilsons, the Jim Bobs, those horrible people that sort of want a militant arm of the government kind of thing to be a religious arm, almost like a crusader arm, right? So Doug here is basically saying, hey, we're going to convince everybody that our way is best, that you need Christ in government, you need everything revolving around Christ as God to make things better, and they'll join us. And I hate to say it, but yeah, that's what they're doing, and that's what they have done. But I think the penny is dropping here for most, as he called them. I didn't call them this. He said normies. I would call them moderates, right? Moderate Christians, right? They're just, they go to church on the weekend. They, do sport. They just are normal people. They don't get bent out of shape about, someone making a Jesus joke. They're just average Christians, average Catholics. They basically told them, oh, well, the reason why the society is breaking down is because of these progressive values. The problem is that that's not the cause. Storytime Drag Hour didn't cause the gross wealth inequality that we see and cause farmers to struggle on their farms. So people like Doug here are going to have a problem in the future where the normies, or the moderates, as I would call them, he calls them normies, are going to turn around and say, hey, you told us doing all of this is going to make our lives better, and it hasn't. In fact, it's gotten worse. And Doug's going to be, oh, it's because the people in charge didn't do what I said, and it's going to be every excuse. And what I am putting over to you is, do not let these people off the hook. Do not let them off the hook with their bullshit that banning people and making life horrendous for marginalized groups is somehow going to make your country great.
I don't believe in going into a Catholic country, having a Protestant monarch go into a Catholic country, and then just by raw dictate suppress all the Catholic stuff. I believe it needs, Paul says in 2 Corinthians 10 that our weapons are not carnal. We don't seize.
Yeah, the problem is, if you go into those countries in Europe, say, which still have a very, very prominent Catholic population, those Catholic countries, as you call them, and you want to have a Protestant festival, they would probably allow you to. They'd probably go, sure, just get your permits. That's the benefit of a secular country. Like, we're not talking about you going into a Catholic country and squashing the Catholic celebrations. What we're talking about is those Catholic countries going, you can't be Protestant and have your, Protestant stuff in this country. Like, for instance, I do know that a lot of them go, oh, Poland, that's got a state religion. That's and that's going well. People are very happy there. Christianity is a state. And it's like, no, it's not state. They actually very, very clearly say it's the national religion. It's like you have a national bird or something. It's not the state religion. So there's an important distinction here, because even though the state says, oh, well, this is the religion of the country, it still has very, very strong freedom of religion laws saying that you can practice any religion that you want. It does not enforce that. And that's why they refer to it as a national religion and not a state one. Because they still have those laws. Sorry, Poland is still a secular country, even though it does have a national religion. Sorry to break it to you.
Power that way. We don't impose those sorts of issues that way.
So I think there might be a tension that you're not quite addressing, or I don't feel like you have, and I want to give you a chance to. And that is your...
Yeah, so I think this Catholic's slowly realizing that there is no place for his traditions in Doug Wilson's Protestant utopia, right? You cannot have a place for your celebrations, for your churches, for your cathedrals, for all of the Catholic traditions in Doug Wilson's Protestant utopia, because that's blasphemy, right? And he's trying to say, hey, we're not, we don't have a sword. We're not taking it. We're convincing people. We're not just seizing power through violence. And that's fine. But how do you enforce it in the future? And it's very telling.
Saying, look, I want to achieve a culture that is Christian.
Yes.
And do it through persuasion, do it through ministry, do it peacefully, do it as a pastor.
Right.
But then at some point, 250, 500 years from now, the law at the local level, so we'll stay within the sort of federalist framework, but the law at the local level, and from your vantage point, it would sound like in every state, if you had your druthers, would actually apply the force of the state at the state level to prohibit, on Columbus Day, from me and my, now very diluted Italian Catholic clan, from, having a procession with the Blessed Mother. That would be the law. That wouldn't just be like people sort of morally shaming us into not thinking we should do it because we'll get dirty looks. It's like, no, the cops will come and say, I'm sorry, you can't do that on the street.
Yes. And that's what we're talking about. That's what we're talking about. That is the ideal. That me as an atheist, if I went out and I had this show and it was in America, he would say, you are blaspheming right now. And Doug Wilson skirts this, and he skirts the issue so much. In his interview with Sam Harris, I wish I had time to grab more of that one, or some of that one to put in here, but he sort of said, well, there's a bigger threat at the moment, and that's Muslims. And he's appealing. So Sam Harris thinks that Muslims are dangerous. I think that Muslims are dangerous in the same way that fundamentalist Christians are dangerous. Like, there's some fundamentalist Muslims that are dangerous. Most of them are fine. Most of them are fine. I think that, he's skirting the issue. He's sort of saying, hey, we're not cracking down on you guys because there's a bigger threat out there. Well, what happens if that threat's no longer there? Well, we all know what happens. That's when he turns his attention to us and to other people and to Catholics and to Mormons and to all of the people he doesn't think fit into his Protestant utopia.
Right. So we all know, I'll get to your question in a minute, the heart of it, but when someone wants to have any kind of parade now, they get a permit. Mm-hmm. So it would not be cops coming and chasing Catholics down the street with billy clubs.
Right. And see how he's skirting the issue. He's saying, oh, but it's not a matter of the police coming and stopping you. It's about permits. Yes, but secularism sort of says that the people giving out those permits won't use religion as a requirement for any of that. They will be independent from religion. And if they do use a person's religion, an accepted religion in society as a reason, that is not okay. That's against the law, right? So freedom of religion. So when you're looking at giving out permits, you might go, oh, is there another thing happening that day? Is there enough, police? Is there all of these things to ensure the safety of the crowd and all of that kind of stuff? But what they're not meant to do is say, well, they're Catholic, let's deny them a permit. Or they're atheist, they shouldn't be permitted to demonstrate. They're Protestant, they shouldn't be permitted to carry crosses on the street. That is what secularism says. It doesn't say, oh, any religious person can't. It's not atheist. It's not any religious person can't carry out any, won't get a permit. It is secular. It's independent. And that's a big difference.
That's not what would happen. Is that what would happen is you wouldn't get the parade permit. That's what would happen.
Yes.
Well, sure, but you're splitting hairs a little bit there, because it's like there is a point. My point. I'm trying to draw a sharp distinction here, which is there is a point at which you do see the final outcome being that at the level of state law, the state can enforce these kinds of restrictions and apply penalties. And so I go to Austin City Council. I want to petition. I want to get a permit. They say no. Sorry, papist. Go back home. You can do it in your house. I proceed to get me and Guido and a bunch of my buddies together, and we get the Blessed Mother, and we go out into the street.
Yeah. So this leads into sort of liberalism and the power to demonstrate and speak up. First Amendment stuff, right? You have the power to address grievances towards your government. So what he's talking about is preventing demonstrations. Like if I was an atheist and I wanted to demonstrate and have a protest that they weren't allowing, say, abortions, for instance, right? Like they weren't allowing them. I didn't like it because I think that there is some good reasons to have them, and that you're not giving women the freedom over their own bodies is based upon a religious judgment from an old book written, years ago, right? So if I protested, out would come the violence, right? Like they would say, no, you're not allowed to. And this is a problem.
And eventually the bill, this is the libertarian in me. Eventually the men with guns come if you do civil disobedience, right?
Yeah, that's true.
So let's like unvarnish this for a moment.
Okay.
How is that consistent with culture by means of persuasion? Why isn't that coercion now?
Well, the only way that state of affairs could ever arise would be if you had persuaded mostly everybody.
Right, but that's skirting the issue. See what he's doing? It's sort of like, but if you convince a vast majority of people that this is the way to go, this is the entailments of your theology and your ideology put into practice, that if I think his name's Sam here, he wanted to practice his religion in public, he would be denied a permit, and if he dared to take that religion to the street and the free exercise thereof, he would be arrested. And he goes, yeah, but the only way you'd have that is if you had a overwhelming majority convinced that I'm right. But don't forget, that's exactly what he wants to do. He wants to convince an overwhelming majority that he is right and implement these ideas. So he is absolutely being disingenuous here, right? Because that's what he's trying to do. So what he doesn't want to say is, yeah, that's exactly what we'd do. We would go grab those Catholics and throw them in jail for blasphemy. So that is what he wants to do. And the way that he wants to do it is convince everybody that this is going to save America or save the world or the righteous thing to do.
Right. So, and this has actually historically been a problem for the Christian faith from the very beginning. So for the Christian faith, distinct from other world religions, took root and formed in the teeth of opposition from the state, concerted persecution from the Roman Empire.
Well, I don't think it's the only religion that has done that. And, I think that's misleading because the Roman Empire didn't really just persecute Christians for all of its history, right? Like the Roman Empire, a lot of the time, they would allow religions. They would just allow them to flourish. It kept the people quiet. They just allowed them to do whatever they wanted to because it was a lot easier than the rebellions that would happen if they stamped down on it. So local customs, local religions, they just went, you do your thing as long as you're paying tribute to Rome, we don't care. I think he's really being very disingenuous here with what he's saying about the Roman Empire and the relationship between Christianity. There's no doubt that at certain points in history, the Roman Empire did persecute Christians, but he's sort of making it out as, it formed with the persecute. No, that isn't really what happened.
Just over centuries. And then finally, the Rome collapsed.
And Jinx, you're absolutely right. That is the whole point. That is the whole point. It's conversion by persuasion now because he doesn't have control. Exactly.
Basically, Constantine converted on his deathbed, and you had Theodosius, the Christian emperor. And so you have the Roman Empire is now converted. What was a persecuted, beleaguered, underground movement for 3 centuries,
right,
was now running the show and was now in possession of armies. Right? What do we do with our armies?
And thank goodness, because otherwise all of Europe would be Muslim already.
Yes, right. Now I recognize that when...
Well, I don't. I think that's a slippery slope argument. I think that, Rome being Christian isn't what prevented Europe from being Muslim. I don't see that as following. I really don't. I think that I really think that there would have been some sort of religion and it wouldn't have been Muslim. I don't know that is the case. I don't know.
To be in possession of the government is to be in possession of a monopoly on coercion.
Yeah.
Yes, and that shouldn't be the case. So, okay, so I'm going to try and break this down. He thinks that having a monopoly of the government is a monopoly of coercion, and that is not true, right? We give the government the ability to coerce in exchange for it acceding us certain rights that it can't coerce and breach, right? This is the social contract. That we say, hey, you will have the ability to coerce us within the law and you get the ability to set those laws. But there are certain rights that we will withhold from the government. And if they are breached, like for instance, if the government goes around killing its citizens, right? Then we basically say, no, you do not get the right to coerce us anymore. That is the heart of rebellions, of revolutions. Like when the government has overstepped its ability to, or it has overstepped the capacity to govern responsibly and not violate the rights of its citizens. That is the social contract that is spoken of by John Locke and all the other great minds of the Enlightenment, of liberalism, that the power, in fact, comes from the people, whether that is coerced in some way or whether it is voluntarily given up. That power still resides in the people. because without the people, you don't have a nation. You not only, you might have a state that is coercing those people via violence or other means, but you do not have a nation. The nation only comes about when the people make a social contract with their leaders that they will give them the power to lay down laws in exchange for upholding those laws consistently, responsibly, and having rights that they cannot violate. That is the essence of liberalism. But, and here's a big but, he's sort of saying that once you get the power over the government, you can do anything you want. And that is not, the monopoly of coercion. No, absolutely not. If you try to do coercion via violence on the people, it ends badly, very badly. Not only for you, but also the people. It is not good. It is not good. And currently the current administration is galloping towards that outcome because they think they have a monopoly on coercion without upholding the social contract on their side, which is not violating people's rights. And though the Constitution of America sort of codifies what those are, it is the state of being that I believe that we still have a right to uphold and enforce that social contract, even if that is against the law, right? The right to autonomy, the right to religious freedom, the right to free speech, all of these things, the Constitution codifies it, but I think the social contract, it's not a real contract, it's implicitly agreed to when you live in a country or live into a society, but there's certain rights that we will not as a people put up with. We won't stand for it. And when they're violated, you break the social contract. You're basically saying, well, I'm not going to uphold your rights. And the response would be, then I'm not going to obey you. You have broken the social contract, and that is a problem.
And you've talked about in other places that you recognize essentially Lord Acton's warning that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Correct. Now, the thing that the danger, and I think, but we both share a libertarian streak here, and I argue this in detail in my book, Mere Christendom, and that is, people say, what are you going to do about when you control the police force and you control the armies and you've got a Christian nation? What are you going to do about blasphemy? What are you going to do with the blasphemer?
Right.
And they usually have in mind the village atheist who's got this blasphemous newsletter that has a circulation of 17 people.
Okay, do you see him skirting the issue here? He's basically said, well, the atheist with 17 people isn't a big deal. Right, what happens when it becomes a big deal? What happens when that atheist has 17,000 followers? What happens if that atheist has 1.7 million followers? What happens when that atheist is deconverting people through sheer strength of arguments? Right? What happens, as we currently see with the deconversion of tons of people away from the church? It has slowed down, but it hasn't stopped. He's not answering the question, what is the logical outcome to having blasphemy laws where you're sort of saying, oh, well, it's not a great big deal because there is an atheist, he's got 17 followers, that's usually what they've got in mind. What about when it's not what they've got in mind? And as an atheist with 2.7k followers, I'd like to know, because you're talking about somebody who 17 people is listening to them. What happens when it's a lot bigger? And that's when you see the violence come out.
What are you going to do with that guy who won't stop blaspheming? And I would say I would much prefer to recognize that in Scripture, over centuries, the biggest blasphemer has always been the state. The Lord Jesus himself was convicted and executed on a blasphemy charge.
Right.
So this should tell us, every Christian should be extremely jumpy about wielding blasphemy legislation because that's how our Lord was killed.
Yes, but he's not saying let's not do it. He's saying let's be careful with our blasphemy legislation. Right? That's the problem. He's skirting the issue. It's like he said, oh, well, usually they've got in mind the atheist with 17 people, so we should be really jumpy about sort of, calling blasphemy on these people. But that's not the only situations that are going to come up. Situations are going to come up where you will have an atheist with thousands of people listening to them and saying, hey, we don't like these laws. What if Christians start to deconvert because of him, in maybe hundreds of them? What do you do with a Christopher Hitchens who deconverts thousands of people? Well, he hasn't addressed that. And the reason he hasn't addressed it is he would rather keep this sanitized version of his theocracy, sort of really sanitize it. So it's like, oh yeah, if there's an atheist in the town square, we would just ignore them. But he's not addressing the question. What about the atheist who is mass deconverting evangelical people? And it may, like, if there is a tendency towards deconversion, that would imperil his Protestant utopia. So it's what's interesting about Doug Wilson, it's not what he says, it's what he doesn't say. It's about him skirting the issue so he doesn't have to address the awful truth.
Right. Now, that doesn't make the question go away. At some point, you have to deal with the Village Atheist newsletter and all. Yeah, at some point, you have to deal with him.
Well, you've got to deal with the atheist that has a movement that is gaining ground and central to a lot of different discussions. Like sort of saying, hey, you've got to deal with the Village Atheist. No, you've got to deal with secular proponents who have tons of followers. And notice how he doesn't address it. He does not address it in the slightest.
But I am far more wary of and suspicious of the sword being applied unjustly than I am about the Virgin Mary procession.
Yeah, but that doesn't answer the question, because is it just that if you have an atheist that is deconverting thousands of people away from your religion, is it just to basically enforce a blasphemy law to stop him from doing that? Right? It doesn't address the central question. Like, just because you gain power through peaceful means, will you allow that power to be taken away by peaceful means? That's the question. That's the question. Right? There is a tendency towards secularism in the modern world. That is a fact. But, what he's not saying is that he will use peaceful means to take control of the government, take control of the armies, take control of, as he calls it, a monopoly on coercion, and then not allow anybody else to use peaceful means to get away from that situation if it turns out bad. So number one is they are deceiving a lot of Christians into thinking that this state of affairs, this theocratic state of affairs, is going to solve all their problems. And it won't. And the second thing he is doing is basically lying, or at least being misleading, perhaps, about, if it doesn't solve all the problems, allowing people an out, a peaceful way to change the policies and the government. Because he won't. Once he has power, he will hold on to it by any means necessary.
You are describing something that makes me uncomfortable, which is you're giving Christendom the sword back, and it sounds like you're saying, hey, we should have our own Sharia law too, because that's the only way we're going to make it. That's the only way we're going to have the kind of Christian moral society that would actually be just. And absent the sword, will just be a bunch of trans degenerates. I'm putting words in your mouth here, but I'm just stylized. We'll be a bunch of weird, whacked out, degenerate, woke zombies that are transing our kids and doing all the kinds of horrible stuff that constitutes modernity, where we raise atomized young people who are an anxious wreck and don't get married and don't, don't live fruitful lives, and all this stuff about modernity that feels like that we can all kind of see.
Yeah, so a lot of these problems, why people aren't getting married, why people aren't settling down, why people aren't having children, that's a very, very complex subject. A lot of it is to do with the unavailability of, or the inaffordability of, any kind of stable home structure, right? Like, it's almost like you've got to get married to even begin to try and afford a home, right? Like, it is a problem, and it's been a problem for a while. It was a problem when I was in my 20s, right? Affordability of homes, right? Like, so, and sort of saying, hey, all of this will be fixed under Christianity. It won't. It won't. You'll be forced to get married, sure, but homes aren't going to suddenly become affordable. And this sort of marginalization of women, that is a direct consequence of this alt-right manosphere sort of, look, men have definite problems at the moment. Women definitely have problems, but men are in a strange place where they are being convinced by online people who, to be honest with you, I think are taking advantage of them, that masculinity is somehow power over others and sort of stomping people's faces. And it's not. It's not. It's absolutely not. And, a lot of boys and men feel alienated because they see their value, and it has been framed their value only comes from wealth, power, the ability to have a hierarchy over others, and all of these sort of weird things. And then religion comes along and sort of says, hey, your hierarchy can be based upon your spiritual faith, can be based upon worshipping a god, and then you have value. And it's a problem. But it's a problem that these guys have generated with their toxic ideas of what masculinity is, and then come along with the solution of Jesus that's not really a solution. It's not a solution at all, in any way, shape, or form. What it is a return to a time where women were discriminated against, women were treated like crap, because in some way they think that that's going to make men feel better about themselves. And it's not. It's not. In some way, we've got to have masculinity as independent from anybody else, right? Like, so, I'm doing an aside here. I usually don't do manosphere things. Maybe I should, because I've got a lot to say on the ideas of masculinity, what I thought it was when I was younger, and what I think it is now. And I base my masculinity on who I am as a person and how I treat the marginalized, the oppressed, how I interact with my community, with my friends, with women, with men, how I stand for my values, and how I treat people who are not as fortunate, or not as lucky as me, or not as privileged as I am, right? I have a privilege to be, not disabled, not in a traditional, maybe autism is a bit, but I have a great brain, right? Like, I know everybody says you're smart. There's days I feel like the stupidest person on earth. Trust me, I really don't see myself as that smart. But I can make, I am lucky to be able to make cognitive connections and express myself very well. I have that ability. So how I treat people that do not have the same privileges as me is what makes me my masculinity, right? So if there is somebody who is struggling and really having a hard time, me stomping on them and saying I'm so much better than you does not make me a man. Quite the opposite. Me lending a hand and reaching down and saying, hey, I'm going to help you for no reason other than I can. And it is my societal obligation to. That is what makes me a man. Not stomping down with a boot, but rather offering a hand. That is what makes me a man. That is that aspect of manhood that is patient. It is strong, but I mean strong in a way that is, just resilient rather than, not physically strong, not, emotionally, mentally strong, like, oh, I'm going to outthink you. No, what I mean is resilient, like the ability to support people is what makes me a man. And I think that sort of Christianity teaching men that, they're rags except for the grace of God. They're evil sinners, but for the grace of God. And if you worship God, you have value. No, my value comes from within. It comes from the things I believe in, the actions that I take to help others, and my place in the world. That's where it comes from. And, that's why if you make fun of me and call me bald, I laugh it off. Because that's not where who I am comes from. That's not where it comes from, right? Like my appearance is not where it comes from. So those kind of insults just bounce off me because that isn't who I am, right? I don't consider myself valuable because I have a full set of hair, or I'm a big ripped guy, or, I've got 10 million women trying to go out with me. That's not where my value comes from. My value comes from helping other people, being strong in the face of adversity and resilient in the face of adversity. I mean, strong's a weird word. It can apply. I prefer resilient. Being compassionate, being understanding. That's where my identity comes from. So all of these things that people try to insult me with, that's why it doesn't work. But I think that there is a problem that men sort of are convinced that it is their, power over others is what makes them manly. And the problem comes that when they don't get that power, they feel like they're not a man. They feel emasculated. They react very badly. And I'm sad for it. I really am. I really am. Oh, thank you, Sapphire. I really appreciate it. Anyway, that was a tangent. Tangents in the chat. Tangents in the chat. Yeah, man up, it makes you want to cringe. Yeah. And so there has been a problem, especially over the 80s, 90s, of men not being able to talk about their feelings, not being able to express what they actually feel, especially things like fear. It is such a primal emotion, fear, and with anger being the only thing acceptable. And that just is not a healthy way to behave.
Is the product of freedom. It's the product of freedom. The freedom to have a merry procession down a public street is of the same sort of danger as the freedom to, raise your kids in a godless nightmare scenario. And maybe I'm overplaying my hand here.
Yeah, but I don't think a godless scenario is necessarily a nightmare. And I think I would juxtapose, like you're saying, hey, this secular society is a nightmare. Oh, thank you. No, it's amazing how much makeup I don't wear. So it's amazing. It's amazing how much I don't wear. Look, I'm doing it how I can. I get you. Look, you're just going to have to deal with it in some way. I can probably turn my lamp down, but I don't care. I don't think it's like you compare how, chill the Scandinavian, the Western European things are. It's pretty chill, like it isn't out of control. It isn't these crazy nations. They're pretty chill. If you've ever been to Netherlands, man, like they're pretty chill. Yeah, hooligan member for 27 months. Oh, 29. It says 21 there. It's 27 months. If you had hair, you couldn't dress up as Lobot. Wait, is Lobot's the one in Star Wars with the lights on that thing? That is hilarious. That's awesome. Hey, look, I'll take it. Lobot was pretty clutch. I gotta say.
And trying to paint the picture, but you get the tension. At the heart of this is like, is that between liberty and theology?
Okay, I think that intolerance is acceptable towards Christians. Okay, so what we have is something called the intolerance paradox in secular societies, right? That intolerance is not tolerated unless it's against intolerance, right? So it is sort of paradoxical that basically that the thing that isn't tolerated is intolerance towards others. So yeah, we don't be intolerant towards Christians if they're not harming anybody. Being like sort of saying, oh, all Christians are bad, we should, do this to them. No, that's not good. But if Christians are going out there and being intolerant towards gay people, towards trans people, towards anybody really, then we say, no, stop that. No, we're going to be intolerant towards that behavior. So, there's Christians. There was, I was looking at him earlier. He was a really cool guy, actually. He was really cool. I can't remember his name. He was a he was just sort of, he was a red letter Christian, so he only followed the words in red, basically what Jesus said and nobody else. I can't remember his name. I mentioned him in another stream. But yeah, he was cool. He was like, yeah, no, everyone's okay with me. And I don't see any problem with that. It's when people are being intolerant of others that the problem comes. So it is called the intolerance paradox. And it's not cool. It's not cool. God, I wish I could. I should sub to him, actually. He's probably been cancelled off YouTube in this day and age, but he'll come up in my feed sooner or later, I'm pretty sure. But he was warning against Christian nationalism kind of thing. And look, I appreciate that. I do. Because it's one thing for atheists to call out Christian nationalism. It's another for Christians to call it out as a bad idea. Christianity is full of beta men. Well, I dislike the terminology, Robin, to start with, because alpha and beta was originally based upon a study some guy did of wolves, and it wasn't even accurate for wolves, much less people. We are not wolves. We don't have alphas and betas. That is not how the structure. There are leaders, sure, but it's not the structure of our social dynamics. So it's yeah.
And I do feel like it is clashing here at this moment that you're describing in the future, in the full revelation.
I would respond to that by saying, if you don't have a theological grounding for it, there's no such thing as liberty.
Yeah, I strongly disagree with that. If you don't have a theological foundation for it, there's no such thing as liberty. I'm sorry. No. Just simply the social construct. The social construct provides liberty, right? We basically have rights that. So instead of thinking it as the government gives you these rights, it is that humans have autonomy to do anything, right? There's going to be consequences, but nothing stops us. And we as a society give the government power to regulate the society in exchange, and that's the contract, in exchange for upholding rights that we withhold its power over, right? So that is where it sort of comes from, that we have certain liberties that we withhold, because if those liberties are not upheld, then we will not uphold our part of the social contract. We will say, no, we are not following your laws. We are not following your instructions because you are not upholding your end of that social contract. Look, all of this during the Enlightenment, as I said, John Locke was the first to pen it. It was expounded upon by people like Rousseau, Voltaire. It really is the way that society is organized, that a society that has a government that is not using its power responsibly ultimately needs to have that power taken away. That's it. No God required.
Okay, explain. Explain.
Okay.
I think I agree with you, but explain.
If there is no God above the state is God. So if you don't recognize the authority of God over our affairs, and whether or not there will be an abortion clinic in this town, whether or not trans surgeries of underage children are legal.
Okay. So trans surgeries do not happen to underage children. This is the lie that they've propagated, right? They've sort of said, oh, well, they're doing surgery on young children. No, they're not. Okay, this is the problem. Okay, that's the problem. That they're outright lying about what's happening, and that is a dog whistle to them. They may be doing things like hormone replacement or puberty blockers on young children. Yes, but that is not surgery. Okay, it's important to realize that that is absolutely reversible. It's not, just to lie like this is not cool. Age for gender surgery. Yeah, so in Australia, the surgery age is not available into 18. Now, top surgery may be available at 16 based upon specific medical advice for some kind of exception, parental consent, and individual circumstances. Okay, so we're talking about generally 18 is the age you can get it. If there is a medical reason that it has to be earlier, that is accounted for, but it's very, very rare. Okay, so the idea of, and that's still a teenager, that's still 16, so the idea that we're doing surgery on children for this is just a flat out lie. It's just a flat out lie. And so what he's doing is lying about the world state of affairs, then saying, oh, it's gone crazy. Isn't this crazy? It's crazy. Everything's gone crazy. Christian nationalism will solve your problems. But it's not true. It's not true. It's just not. So this is the sort of bait and switch that he's doing.
Right. When you pass a law saying no more trans surgeries for kids, stop transing.
There is no that law already exists. That law already exists, with exceptions for medical reasons, but that's top only, not bottom. You have to be 18. You have to be an adult in order to get bottom surgery. That's it. That's it. I will point out that there was a guy in Australia who got top surgery. He was an adult, like he was in his 30s or 40s or something. Like he got top surgery because he lost a bet. Okay, like one of the most Australian things you can imagine. Basically, he lost a bet and he got breasts. And the interview was hilarious. I'll try and find it just in case you want to see it. But he basically said, yeah, girls love it, and he basically said he might keep it. Like, what do you do in that case? Is that something he shouldn't be able to do? Like, the dude lost a bet and said he would get, fake implants if he lost this bet, and he lost the bet and did it, which to be honest with you, I admire his, his willingness to follow through with the bet, to be honest with you. But, what do you do at that point? What do you do at that point? I get boobs. Oh, I can't show that on YouTube. Oh, wow. Yeah, no, I can't show that on YouTube. Yeah, no. No. Yeah, so we lost a bet. The thing is, here's the thing. I remember this interview kind of thing. Give me one sec, and I'll just share this. This is like, seriously, this is a dude. Oh no, this guy's from California. Okay, so there's been a few people that have lost a bet and got breast implants. Like, seriously. Oh, did I get raided? Did I get raided? Put a no about the raid. Oh, thank you for the raid. I think it was Lil. Did Lil do the raid? Was it you? Who's attacking me? I gotta know. Ambush, raid. Oh, was it ambush to apostate? Thank you, Seth. I really appreciate it. Did Mark break? Did I break? Dude, I break every single show, and this one with this guy, doubly so. Seth, well, whoever raided me, thank you. They may not have enough to like bring up the banner and do an actual redirect, but hey, I appreciate it anyway. I appreciate it anyway. Look, and it's really funny that the guy that got implants, he basically says, yeah, I'm going to keep them because women love them. They love them. It's like, okay, the man's a pragmatist. I respect it. I respect it. Okay, I respect it.
Kids. No more abortion clinics. No more sodomite.
Oh, thank you, Seth. Really appreciate it, mate. Really appreciate it. You know what? I've got to have you on, especially maybe with Lil, but also I want to get people on. Hooligan, do you want to come on, have a chat, maybe about masculinity, maybe about something like that? I would love to do it. I would love to do it.
Marriages. No more same-sex mirage. When you say that, you're only able.
Okay, and listen to the words, same-sex mirage. My guy, like, what my question would be is if a marriage that is same-sex is not sanctified by the state, which would be a Christian entity in Doug's worldview of wonders here, then what's to stop him from saying, hey, we're not going to recognize Hindu marriages because they're not Christian, or we're not going to acknowledge that Muslim marriages are a thing because they're not Christian, right? And so we then look at another facet of his ideology, which is that like only how votes are given to one household kind of thing, right? Just one household. Women don't get a vote. It's just the household. So if you have control over what is a marriage and what isn't, and a household is a marriage by this guy's theology, then you have control over who is voting. Right?
To say that because there's been a Christian consensus and because you now have the guns.
Isn't that just might makes right, though? Isn't that just mob rule?
Well,
yeah, and I want you to listen to that again.
The guns.
Isn't that just
no more sodomite marriages, no more same-sex mirage. When you say that, You're only able to say that because there's been a Christian consensus and because you now have the guns.
Right. Right. So while he's saying, hey, we're doing this peacefully, we're not using the sword, we are simply going to convince people to come over to our side. Once they are in power, right, they're going to enforce it with violence. So if they make a blasphemy law that basically says you're not allowed to blaspheme in the public thing. If I go out there and say, well, I'm an atheist, I don't believe in this Jesus stuff, I think, it's complete garbage, they will enforce that I don't have a right to say that with violence, with physical coercion, right? So they're happy to use free speech to get into the government to then deny it to everybody else, which is wild. And these are the people that go, oh, they're cracking down on free speech because there is a social consequence for being a racist like Doug Wilson here. Yeah, there is. There's a social consequence. But you're allowed to say racist stuff without the government coming in and arresting you. And we know that because Doug Wilson has been saying racist stuff, produced a racist pamphlet, minimized slavery, and the government didn't come in and arrest him. Like, holy crap. Holy crap.
Isn't that just might makes right, though? Isn't that just mob rule?
It is.
Well, no. That's the point. It's mob rule now.
Okay.
Right? What we have.
It is not mob rule now, because and a majority of people completely disagree with this guy, and no one is stopping him from speaking. Right? He's still allowed to say the fucked up things that he says. But it's very important to realize that he is promoting a situation where if things go wrong, if Christian nationalism is oppressive to Catholics, or they start to implement blasphemy laws, stoning people to death, they're basically saying, we will not give up power peacefully, even though a majority of people disagree with us. That we will enforce our right to rule with violence. And on the other side, you have liberalism basically going, well, we gave you this power in the first place. And if you do not use that power responsibly and uphold our rights, then we're going to take it away. The inevitable outcome is the oppressed rising up against the oppressor. That is the inevitable outcome of this situation. And it's what's happened in every theocracy across the world. Like Iran is currently having the people try to overthrow. Well, it was until Trump started carpet bombing them, and now they've sort of gone, well, maybe this regime isn't too bad considering the Americans are killing our children in schools. But they were having massive problems because the people were going, no, we do not accept this regime. And the true liberty doesn't come from a god, it comes from the people. That's where it comes from.
The guns are not going away either way. So in every society, there will be a locus of power. Someone's going to be in charge.
Yes, and so in democratic countries and countries that are sane, in my opinion, they spread the power out over the people so that the people as a body can choose how they're going to be governed and enforce the upholding of rights of those people. Now, we can take away rights if people are being harmed. That's okay. We totally understand that. If something is harming people, we need to stop it. But you're not giving us an explanation of why being gay and married is harming anybody. It's just this vague, nebulous, oh, it's bad for society. How? Oh, well, you're not going to have children and then the human race will die out. No, we're still gaining population. Birth rates have slowed. We're not actually losing population. That is a bullshit argument. It's a slippery slope argument saying, oh, but everybody's not going to have children and then the human race is going to die out. It's absolute bullshit, right? The amount of humans keeps growing. It does. All right, so that's absolute horseshit. It's called a slippery slope argument. It's basically saying, well, if we allow people to have gay marriage, they don't have children. If everybody does that, and then down the line somewhere, if, and then down the line, well, we won't have enough population to sustain a working human population. It's a slippery slope argument. We don't know that that's going to happen. And as the population slows down, that doesn't mean it's not growing. It just means it's growing slower. It's not exploding at a huge rate. And that may be actually beneficial for our societies. Now, it comes with problems, right? Because, we have a aging population. We need to, in some way, take care of elderly people with younger people coming in. And that's a problem. But it's entirely addressable with things like automation, robots, other things. It's addressable, right? Like, it is addressable. But the idea that suddenly we're just going to die out because because of gay people, bullshit. Absolute horse crap argument. So you've got to actually show, in order for us to say, hey, we're going to take away the right for gay people to be married, you've got to show that it's actually harming people. And they're not. They're just saying, hey, believe me, because my God doesn't like it. It's not good enough.
There's going to be an establishment somehow, some way. I want checks and balances on that power.
Yes, and the ultimate check and balance on the power of the state is the power of the people. Ultimately, that is what the final check and balance is. That's what it is. Like, you think it's other... No, it's the people.
Right? And this goes back to your citation of Lord Acton. Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And if there is no God recognized above the state, then the state has the full liberty to claim absolute power to itself.
No, the state does not claim absolute power to itself, because it can be removed by the people. That is the entire essence of democracy. That the people give the state power, but it doesn't have absolute power. That is so wrong. He's basically saying, if you don't have a God, the state becomes the God. And that is completely untrue, because that power resides in my fellow Australians or your fellow Americans, because they are the country, they are the nation. They're the only reason the state exists. So they will always have that power. Now, it can be coerced, I get you. Yes. But that's not a good state of affairs, right? The reason why America has been so successful is because it hasn't been a totalitarian state that enforces their power by force. It is a state where the state, the executive, the branches, they are representatives of the people and given power by the people. That's why it's been so successful. Because when some idiot decides that he's above the law, the people remove him. And he can be removed. That's the genius of the system. Gay people can often have babies. Yeah, they can have surrogates and stuff. The weird thing is, Ember, that they protest about surrogates at the same time, which I don't... I have no idea. I don't understand. Like, they basically go, well, we want people to have babies, but we don't want people to use surrogates. What? It's weird. Look, let's face it, they just don't like gay people because of prejudice, and they've been taught this by their parents. But when asked to articulate how a pride parade hurts the nation, it's some really vague, nebulous, it's, promoting sinful behavior, and it, there's no actual causality pointed out. But when you sort of say, how is unregulated weapons harming society, we can point to some real instances.
And so the American Constitution was a work of theological genius.
It wasn't theological. Like, this is the thing. This is what he does. He smuggles in theology into everything. The American Constitution was theological genius. There is nothing theological about it. In fact, the First Amendment, the Establishment Clause, it prevents a theological basis for the thing. And it doesn't say that anything comes from God. Okay? It doesn't say that. It says we the people. It says that power comes not from God, but the people, right? It comes from not a theological sovereign, rather it comes from the people of the nation. So, no, it's not theological. Absolutely not.
Because what they did was they carefully parceled out power, some to the executive branch, some to the legislative, some to the judicial.
But that power came from we the people. It was a sociological document, not a theological one. Definitely not.
And it was a federalist system where then the rest of the parcels were parceled out to the states, respectively, to the people or to the states. C.S. Lewis says that there are two kinds of Democrats, small d Democrats. One thinks that everybody's opinion is so valuable that you can't take any action until you consult with everybody. Mm-hmm. The other approach to democracy, and the one that Lewis said he held to, and the one I hold to, is that men are so corrupt and so sinful that you want to spread the power as thinly as possible so that no one person can lord it over everyone else.
Yeah, so C.S. Lewis is full of shit. C.S. Lewis is terrible, and that is a false dichotomy, right? There is like small d Democrat, like you have to ask everybody. It's impractical, okay? There is technically ways to set up pure democracy, right? You basically, you check in and have voting for everybody. There's ways to set up a system that has no executive, right? So the three branches of government, actually, I've got to show this clip. I've got to show this clip because it's got my friend Jim Bob. No three branches. So you've got the executive, which is basically the government, like the White House, the erudite. I'm trying to find it. Have I not subscribed to this person? So you've got the executive, the judicial, which is sort of the judges, the courts, all of the stuff which interpret the law, the Supreme Court, all of that stuff is the judicial branch, and then you sort of have the legislative, which is the ones that make the law. Oh, I'm not sure if she has it up. I don't know. I'd love to find that. I'd love to find it. Oh, hopefully it's not on. So basically, there's say anarchy systems, ones without the executive, so without the White House. Basically, it only has a legislative and a judicial branch. Right, and a good example of this is something called syndico-anarchy, right? Where it was used in Ireland, where basically there were syndicates, there was groups of parties, or they're kind of like parties, but they're more for particular issues. There's groups of syndicates, and you would lend your vote to one of those syndicates. And then whichever syndicate had the most power, it would take that action on that thing. Robin, if you could find it, because I'm sort of struggling to find it at the moment. Maybe it's because Jim Bob's so damn shitty. But, if you could find it, I'd really appreciate sending it over. I really would, because it's actually hilarious. So in syndico-anarchy, you don't have the executive branch. The problem comes with that if any decision has to be made quickly, it takes time. It takes time to address through legislation. You have to go to the legislative, see who has the most votes in the syndicate, and then carry out the action. It takes time. So if you're under attack from another nation or something, it takes too much time. It's impractical, right? So when you're sort of saying, hey, we've got to ask everybody their opinion on every issue, it's very hard to do because the government is not responsive. Right. The government just sort of, has to consult that much. So that's why we don't do that. On the other side, you have representative democracy where you basically vote for a representative who then makes decisions and can make decisions quickly. That's what we've gone for. But it's not really which one is right. It's a matter of pragmatism. And perhaps in a some sort of utopia, a system, an anarchist system where there is no executive and just legislative and judiciary may be a better system. But that's not this world that we live in. We've got to address the problem with how adaptive and how responsive our political systems are. That's just a fact that, when I was ideological and young, I thought, there's no reason for the executive. We can do syndico-anarchy and just have everybody contributes to whichever place they want. And then, it's all very democratic. Sure. But it's slow and it's not a good way to do it. I think that representative is way better.
Carrying an image of the Virgin Mary down Main Street, no, right?
Oh well,
what about?
Was that it? Yeah. So he's making he's making tons of what I would say are false dichotomies. Sort of, you have to have it this way or this way. You have to have God or chaos. No, that is not a thing. That is not a dichotomy. We can choose to not have God and have an ordered, structured laws. You either have God or no liberty. No, that's not a thing. We can implement liberty without a God. Like, what are you talking about? This is just dogma and him, yeah.
So I'd want to visit with them. I'd want to imitate what the Apostle Paul did all through the book of Acts.
Yeah, and I agree. I think that a lot of the problems that are being leveraged against secularism are actually against capitalism, right? Like this problem of lobbying governments with money is not a problem of secularism. It's a problem of capitalism. Like, let's be clear on this. There is nothing in secularism which says that your status in society would be higher if you had more money or more capital. There's nothing that says that. Secularism is a very nebulous thing. It can have all kinds of stuff. It can be bad, but it's certainly better than theocracy, in my opinion. Because you can say, well, secular society can be oppressive. Sure, but theocracy by its nature always is oppressive. Always. And the problem comes that if Doug Wilson tried to implement his version of theocracy, a majority of Christians probably wouldn't accept it. Which is why they're playing like a long game, trying to convince everybody that secularism has failed. You need Christ in order to have a functioning society. In the face of all evidence, they're outright lying to people and saying that you need God in order for society to function. And the tragic thing is that some atheists have fallen into that trap. Like, well, I don't believe in God, but we need Christianity in order to have a functioning society. No, you don't. And the states in Europe that have a perfectly functioning society, that is proof that you don't. They're secular. They've got a very, very small amount of people that believe in God, and they're doing perfectly fine. And instead of actually saying, well, yeah, a state can have not a central God or central theology and still be successful, they lie and say, oh, Sweden, it's uninhabitable, and if you go places, you'll be killed. It's bullshit. it's bullshit because I know Swedish people, but a lot of Americans don't.
He comes to Athens and he preaches Christ and the resurrection to a city full of idolaters, but he doesn't mount a military campaign.
What would you say to historic scholars who say America was not founded as a Christian nation?
I would have fun with them.
Don't you think if the framers had the same vision?
Yeah, it wasn't founded as a Christian nation. It wasn't. There's a lot of evidence to suggest that it was founded as a secular nation because they were fleeing religious oppression. So they wanted to prevent that religious oppression in the new country. It's kind of wild that they claim that it's sort of founded as a Christian nation. It's actually wild to me. Yeah, I can't find it either, Robin. I could possibly go back. Like it just appeared on my splash, like on my homepage at some point. Like yeah, wild, but it's funny. Don't kill yourself, but if you can find it, that'd be great because it's actually funny. Where's my thing?
As you, that this is a Christian nation, that they would have made that explicit in the Constitution and not have put in the Establishment Clause and the prohibition of religious tests for office holders, that they would have made it explicit in the documents.
The federal government may not have a Church of the United States. Like the Church of England, the Church of Denmark is the Lutheran Church. They have flat prohibited a Church of the United States. And they flat prohibited religious tests for office at the federal level.
Thomas Jefferson, for his part, was a big proponent of religious liberty. Right. It was one of his big accomplishments. Yeah. It's on his gravestone that he had this religious liberty law passed in Virginia.
Yeah.
So what would you say to historic scholars who would point to that and say, the framers of this country did not mean for this to be a Christian nation. They meant for it to be a nation where people can exercise their religion freely, no matter what that religion is.
First, I would invite these historic scholars in the most friendly way possible to have a public debate on the subject. I think I don't want to, King Ahab in the Old Testament says, let not him who puts on his armor boast like him who takes it off. But I think I would do okay. And
yeah, I don't think you would. I think you would do okay, but like an overwhelming amount of scholars are like, yeah, you can't say that the framers of the Constitution wanted a Christian country. And you know, the fact that they basically accredit power to the people and not a god is very, very telling that they never wanted to establish a country that was Christian in nature, because they never reference God in the Constitution. I think it was called something like Jim Bob Gets Basic Civics Wrong or something. I should have bookmarked it. Let me see if I can find it. Let me see if I can find it because this is just too good. What have we got? All right. There he is. There he is, the midwit. There he is. I don't know why that's open.
What is wrong with your brain?
Does your gut? Do you
I
understand?
use your logic.
What are the three branches of the government?
Legislative, fucking. Sorry, finish it for me.
Executive.
Wow. This is supposed to be like some kind of, he thinks himself some kind of genius political commentator. Can't even name the 3 branches of government. They do reference the creator. Yeah, but I mean, that is not necessarily indicative of Christianity, right? Like, because a lot of them were deist. So they believed in a god, but a nebulous creator god. So yeah, it still doesn't reference a god. This is the amazing political commentator, Jim Bob, who doesn't know the 3 branches of government. I mean, holy shit. That is primary school or grade school stuff. It's grade school stuff.
I think I would do okay because I'd be able to point to the primary documents as well.
How would a Muslim or a Mormon or even a Catholic?
I would love to see somebody ask him, like, describe the 3 branches of government. Like, what do they do? And how do they relate to one another? Wow.
Fit into your version of a Christian nation?
Yeah. So one of the reasons we have such...
I mean, I don't usually even do political commentary, and I know that. The executive, legislative, and judiciary. I know that, and I'm not even a political commentator. I learned that in school.
problems with it.
Well, yeah, but that's not a part of government. That's not a part of government, Biker. So that's known as the 4th estate. But it's not part of government. It's supposed to be independent. You know, it's, if someone could tell Fox it's supposed to be independent, that'd be great. Thank you.
Assimilating Muslims and all these different Hindus, is that there are so many of them, right? So if we had a Christian republic and a Muslim came to Disneyland with his family, we have no problems. But when they fill up Dearborn, Michigan, that's just not. You can. It says in Amos 3:3, can 2 walk together except they be agreed? You cannot put alien worldviews together, cheek by jowl, and have peace, right? So basically, I think.
Oh yeah, that's fair. Unofficial. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. But I would, you know, instead of the press being unofficial branch of government, I would say that I mean, that may be what it is at the moment, but that is not what it should be. It should be independent and completely separate from the government, showing it neither fear nor favor. That's what it should be. But, you know, I just want to comment on sort of what he says. So he's basically said that Muslims and Hindus and things can't live with Christians. And the really telling thing is that's not coming from them. It's coming from this guy. And, you know, we've got plenty of Muslims and Hindus and people over here. It's not a problem. As long as you keep it secular, any amount of religions is fine. But be warned, when it isn't secular, like, so what are all the other religions supposed to do in this guy's utopia? Well, he throws them out. He makes them leave.
A lot of the religious turmoil that we have, the clashes that we would have, could be addressed by a sane immigration policy, not a policy that tries to regulate what people can say or do in their religious convictions while here.
So
No, a lot of the religious turmoil that we've had has been caused by people just like this guy. Just like this guy. Because he wants his religion to be special, whereas, you know, the whole idea of equality is we treat all religions the same. Because there is no way to tell who is right and who is wrong for an outsider, we just treat them equally. And they can have their religious practices as long as they're not hurting anybody. And that's it. But he wants his to oppress those other ones, which, you know, you're not going to convince a diehard Muslim to come over to Christianity. So what are you talking about? You're talking about not allowing Muslims in the country because you don't like their religion. So religious oppression.
foundation for you is you believe this is a Christian nation,
Right.
despite the debate from historic scholars.
Exactly. But notice that when the Muslim says to me, who are you to say? I can say, all right, we have to live together. Who are you to say which way it should go? And then the secularist comes in and says, let's do it this way. And Muslim and I would both turn to him and say, and who are you to say?
Well, this is the only way it will work. Because when you start to oppress another religion in a country, based upon not the harm that they're doing, but that religion will fight back against you. So what secularism is trying to do is trying to avoid the incredibly destructive wars of religion of Europe, right? Like where Protestants fought with Catholics, that fought with Jews, that went and wiped out the Cathars, wiped out the Teutonic, like just a mess, because each time they got into power, they oppressed all of the other religions. You know, when Catholics got into power, they oppressed the Protestants. When the Protestants got into power, they oppressed the Catholics. Like, secularism is an attempt to step in and say, hey, nobody oppress anybody's religion and we'll be just fine. And these guys are like, yeah, but my religion deserves to oppress others. There is only one outcome of that, and it is religious wars. I mean, does anybody remember the Troubles in Ireland, where it was Catholic versus Protestant? Just all-out war. No? Just me? Okay.
You feel like we can't have a functioning society
Yeah, we can.
without.
And look at our society currently, not functioning.
Do you
Yeah, well, the society is limping along, I get you, but this is the thing. He's trying to say that all of the problems of capitalism are problems of secularism, and that is not the case. He's basically going, oh, well, all of these problems are caused by us not having enough God in the government. Well, now that Project 2025 came along and you're carrying that out, right? This is Heritage Foundation, Project 2025. This is how we fix America. It's in worse shape now. It's in worse shape now. So these guys have to be held to that. They're going to want to throw up their hands and say it had nothing to do with us. We didn't do this. It had nothing to do with Christian nationalism. We have to hold their feet to the fire. That they said that this nation, that the American nation, would be so much better off if Jesus got back into the White House. And it isn't. And nothing's fixed. And the reason why nothing's fixed is because secularism was never the problem in the first place. And a lot of the things that he's saying, oh, the nation's not working, is due to capitalism and not secularism. So let's be clear about this. The question that we want to pose to them is, why isn't the nation suddenly doing really well again? And just not take it when they say, oh, no, we haven't implemented everything, it's going to be great. No, there's always going to be division if you oppress people. Always.
believe that secular society is basically a religion of its own that is the antithesis of your
Correct.
Christianity?
Secularism is a religious.
No, it isn't. Secularism is not a religious. It is a social ideology. It's a political stance. It's not a religion. Nobody is worshipping secularism. Nobody is. Look, I had a definition of religion, that was sort of all encompassing, but it did. I can't remember it offhand, but it did include that sort of there is an object of worship or adoration, basically, an object that you worship. With secularism, it's more a pragmatic approach in order to deal with the inherent inequality and violence that religion seems to promote and, tacitly endorse. So it's not that we worship anything. What do we worship? What are we holding up here? Nothing. We're just saying, hey, it works better.
Faith, religious commitment. Remember what I said about if there is no God above the state is God. Mm-hmm. Well, if that's...
Yeah, that's not true. That's not true. If there's no state, God above the state is God. That is not true. Absolutely not. I don't think the state is God. Like, it's just ridiculous. This whole idea that, oh, well, if you don't believe in Jesus, then the state is God. No. What are you talking about? Like, unless you mean, I don't even trust my government 100%. I trust them for most things. The buses run on time and stuff, but I don't go, oh, well, they're totally, inerrant and wonderful and I worship. No, that's not a God, my guy. What are you talking about? Like, this is a false analogy that you're basically saying, well, if you aren't worshipping a God, then you have to be worshipping your government. And that is 100% not true. There's many things I disagree with on my government, and I would not worship them. It's ludicrous. This is nonsense.
It's the case for the secularist, and I believe it is, and it's a religious level commitment. Then who's in charge of the current secular God?
And how
Who's in charge of there is no secular God. If it's who's in charge of the government or the state, it's the people in general, the vox populi, if you will, the voice of the people. That's who's in charge, right? The boss of the state is the people, and the people and the state are not the same thing.
much is your post-millennialism belief driving all of this?
Great deal of it, yes.
Tell our
And
viewers about that, what that is.
most American evangelicals are premillennial, meaning that they believe everything's falling apart, and when things get really bad, the Antichrist is going to take over, and then Jesus will come again and save us from all that. But it's a pretty grim view of human history between now and the end.
Yeah, and Sam Harris pointed out something, the volume of the physical. Okay, yeah, sure. No worries. Thanks, Spiker. Thanks for letting me know, mate. I will get my program here, and I will lift it up a bit. Hopefully this does the trick.
That's the premillennial understanding. A postmillennialist is someone who believes that the gospel is going to be victorious in the world. The nations will, in fact, be discipled.
And you have said, I don't have a direct pipeline to Pete Hegseth.
Right.
That's a bit
don't
too
you
much.
think your influence is having an impact right now?
I hope so. I write books, and I don't write and publish books to launch them into the void. I want people to read them and be influenced by them.
Yeah, so and sort of Sam Harris sort of said, well, that idea of there's an end of the world and we're headed towards the end of the world and it's a good thing would stop Christians from actually trying to prevent any calamity that's coming up. Because if you do believe that the collapse of the world is coming, then any sort of any breakdown in society, in environment, in any of these things is a good thing, because you're headed towards the saving of your soul and the entry into heaven. And he's got a point. This is antithetical to keeping a stable, reliable, ordered world, because the breakdown is what you want. It's great for these people, and that is terrible.
And when people read them and are influenced by them, and they're in a position to actually do something, it's gratifying. I'm happy about that.
Because for many years, decades frankly, your views were really seen as fringe.
Yes.
Now do you see
Not
them?
by me, not by my wife.
Not by you or your wife or your community, but
yes.
they were seen as fringe. Do you now see them becoming more mainstream?
Yes, I do. They have become, my views on a number of things have become steadily more mainstream, and have done that without me moving at all.
You think
Yeah, but what has changed is that they have had a concerted effort to blame any progressiveness for the problems in their society. They will blame everything on gay people, trans people, anything at all on them, because they don't like them to be there. But even if they did take away all of these things, it wouldn't fix the problems, because the problems aren't progressiveness.
people have come to you? They've
Yeah,
come to
people,
you.
so basically, what has happened as the whole zeitgeist of the official zeitgeist has moved steadily left into more woke territory, a number of normies, as I called them earlier, looked at where that was going and said, I don't want to go there. And so maybe we ought to give that Wilson character a second look. He sounded pretty crazy 20 years ago, but I'm rethinking that.
And what are you seeing happen in the Trump administration right now that reflects your Christian values?
The series of appointments in the federal judgeships that led to the overturning of Roe would be the central thing. If our church doesn't have a spire with a bell in it yet, but if we had the bell, that would have been, when Dobbs came down, we would have been ringing it all day. But
Yeah, and Dobbs was terrible, and now women have to travel interstate in order to save their lives because pregnancy is still a risky proposition. It just is. It has inherent risks, like any medical procedure, any medical condition. It has inherent risks, and the maternal mortality rate during childbirth in America is terrible. It's terrible, okay? Terrible. And, you know, forcing women to travel interstate because their lives are in danger or possibly risking their lives is not cool. That is not cool because you have a religious bias. That is not cool at all. So a lot of the things that you've implemented as a Christian nationalist, people are now turning around. These normies he's talking about are turning around and going, wow, that was a bad idea. That was a terrible idea. You know, that woman died because she couldn't get an abortion. That's an awful idea. Yeah.
And you want to see Obergefell.
I want to see Obergefell go the same direction. I am very pleased with the naming of the fraudulent behavior that has overseeing the squandering of trillions of dollars. One of my old jokes.
Yeah, so Obergefell is the legislation, the right for same-sex couples to marry, and he wants to do away with it. So this idea that we sort of said where it's not just going to be the trans people, they're going to set their sights on gay people next, and other people next, and Catholics, and then, Islam, and then Catholics, atheists. They're going to set their sights on everybody that does not agree with their theology. That is what they will do, right? And what they're very good at. Oh, hey, time travelers, welcome. Thank you so much for the raid. I hope Nick's doing well. I love his work. I wish I could watch. How dare he have streams when I'm doing a stream. Definitely punishing it. Yeah, Mick, it's a raid and it's awesome. But what they're very good at doing is turning to demographics of people and going, hey, you don't like this, come on board with the Christian nationalists and we'll get rid of this thing that you don't like. And so they will turn to, say, the Catholics and go, hey, you don't like abortion, we don't, let's get us all powered up and we can help you stop it, help you do these things. I think that the Christian, the Catholics need to realize that in giving them power, they will eventually have these Protestant utopia be not a place for them either. And I showed you that clip earlier of them basically saying, yeah, we wouldn't allow the Eucharistic procession, basically a Catholic festival, right? So they're very good at getting people on board with, you know, their movement to work against their interests in the long run while addressing what they want in the short run. The problem comes is that, like now, a lot of these MAGA people are turning around and going, yeah, but I didn't want this. It's like, yeah, that's the stuff they didn't tell you. That is the Project 2025 down the road where they are trampling on your rights that you don't want them to do. So this guy's like, come on, libertarians, come with me. I'm a libertarian. Get on board and we're going to clamp down on all these things in the government that we don't like. But then what they'll do is set up a theocracy with blasphemy laws and all these things. And a libertarian may go, hey, I didn't want this. Then you shouldn't have supported this guy.
Was that I'm opposed to chaplains praying at Congress, because the Bible says not to turn a den of thieves into a house of prayer. Mm-hmm. And it's just the pillage that is going on there has been remarkable, and I'm just very gratified at the efforts of Doge and other things like that to put a spotlight on those sorts of things.
Okay, so Doge did not actually save any money, right? This is the important thing to understand, that Doge, what it did was basically eliminated departments that the right-wing administration that's currently there did not like. It wasn't there for efficiency and saving money. It wasn't. It was there to replace people and replace institutions with institutions that were loyal to the current executive branch. It wasn't there to save money or be efficient. And, an argument could be made it was also there to gather information as well and, sort of get access to systems which they couldn't have gotten access to. The horrifying thing about Doge is that we still don't know who was in charge of that when it was running. Nobody was in charge of it. There was, it is insane. It's insane. But saving money is not something that it did. It wasn't there to save money. It wasn't there to make things more efficient. It was there to reform the government in the image that the Project 2025 people wanted. That's why it was there. Let's not pretend. And I mean, this interview was a while ago. It was some months ago. But I don't think anybody can argue. And it's really interesting that this guy supported Trump. And Trump has made more money during his presidency than every single previous president combined. I'll say that again. Trump has made more money in his, 1 1/4 presidencies than every single other president combined. Right? He has grifted and grasped and absolutely piled in the cash, right? So this whole idea of, the government was all corrupt, we put Trump in and he drained the swamp. No, he didn't drain the swamp. He put a funnel to him and replaced the swamp with a one-way conduit of that money going all to him. It's and his crony capitalist friends as well, like big tech and all of these companies, absolutely grifted his way through. The Trump family has been making deals. It's absolutely ridiculous that he's like, the government was corrupt, so we got Trump in. The Project 2025 was about defeating progressive politics and sort of going back to an incredibly conservative Christian theological state of executive. And, that is really what they're after. But in order to do so, they had to lie to people and say that all of your problems are being caused by wokeism, they're being caused by this thing, they're being caused by that. The problem is that you can't keep that lie up. But as Doug said, that when they do get power, someone has to have control over the armies, and it's going to be him. I would really like to ask this guy, who's going to be in charge in your paradigm? How are decisions going to be made? And you'll probably find it is some sort of ecumenical council, some sort of council of religious leaders that will be making the decisions. Well, how do you get rid of those leaders if there's a problem? Well, you can't. There is no way to. Because it's up to God who's in there.
And what about banning transgender military members?
Oh, that's great.
You think that's great?
That's absolutely great.
And gender.
Yeah, and this is the problem that they're finding, that they keep throwing out anybody that they find objectionable, too woke, too atheist, or too irreligious, perhaps, too trans, too gay, and they keep throwing them out. The problem is when you start to throw those people out, you're not left with the cream of the crop. Like, don't get me wrong, there's probably some fundamentalist Christians in the military that are fantastic, but, you're really hurting your ability to get the best people, and we're seeing that all over, right? So I looked it up earlier in the day when I was preparing for the stream, that if they basically say, hey, you can't be an atheist, or if you are an atheist, okay, let's say that you can be an atheist, but you're not allowed to talk about it. You're not allowed to express dissatisfaction with the Christian theocracy that you're in, that he is suggesting, the Protestant utopia that he has in mind. that you don't like that. And as an atheist, you want to say, hey, I don't think Jesus rose from the dead. He was talking about having blasphemy laws for that kind of thing. Right? What's going to happen? Well, either, people are going to rise up and say, hey, we don't like these laws, or the atheists will just leave. Now, I really would like to put it to him that somewhere between 46 and I think it was 52% of scientists have no religion, right? They're nuns. Like, they might not be atheists, but they're either agnostic or they're just indifferent. They just don't care about religion, don't follow it. They're just whatever, which I would define as an atheist. But if they don't, hey, it's their choice what they're labeled with. So, but what happens when those people go, well, I don't like this, I'm going to leave for Europe or something? Are you going to let half of your scientists leave the country? Of course they won't. Because the people they're talking about putting in are young earthers like Doug here, who believes that dinosaurs lived with men and that evolution isn't a real thing. This is the problem with religious implementation over institutions like science, like the government. You're basically putting in people for their religious fervor and not their capabilities, not their merit, right? You're basically saying, well, you don't deserve this position, but like me, you think dinosaurs roamed with man, so you're going to have this position. Or you're a fundamentalist, you believe in God and what you're doing, so I'm going to make you the the Secretary of Health. And next thing you know, there's a malaria outbreak because that idiot doesn't believe in vaccines. That's what you get. Dark Ages. But would they let half the scientists in the country leave? I don't think so. Even if it's a quarter of the scientists, just say half of the atheists or half of the no religion scientists decide that's enough, they're not going to put up with it, they're leaving. Are they going to let them lose all of that talent to France and Belgium and China and Australia? No. They're going to basically lock down on them.
Gender issues.
Gender issues.
As I mentioned before the interview, I was in the submarine service, for example, and whatever idiot thought of putting women on submarines.
Well, what would you
What's wrong with women on submarines? I don't understand that.
say to a female submariner who's been doing the job and kicking butt doing it?
I'd say, yeah, we don't want you down here kicking butt.
Why?
Because I went to sea a couple of times. We were submerged for 2.5 months. All right. 2.5 months, let's say 130 guys in a submarine with 3 women on it. Okay, so let's put 130 horny sailors and 3 women and submerge them out in the middle of the Atlantic for 2.5 months. What could
I really worry about this guy, that he cannot, like, he's basically, well, if I'm in a submarine for a few months, I'm definitely attacking a woman that's around me. Are you serious? I am horrified at this guy's lack of control. Like, seriously. That is ridiculous. I really worry about people like this. Like, oh, well, if I'm stuck with a woman for a couple of months, I can't help myself, it's the woman's fault. No. This is the thing with suppressing your urges. Look, within the confines of your own head, you can have all the fantasies that you want. No one's preventing you from doing that, right? It's just your actions have to be professional in a professional environment. But no one's saying you can't be, horny and attracted to a woman. It's just, you have to be respectful and keep it professional if you're in a professional engagement with them. That's all. You can control yourself. You're not, you can make choices. I do not understand this chain of logic, which is, well, if you send 130 men down in a submarine, they will be so horny that the women will just be in trouble. No. What? No. What are you talking about? I don't understand. I do not understand. I think personally, and this is just my opinion, I think it's because, if they're working with a woman, right, or a woman working with a man, right? Like, it doesn't even matter, either way round. And, you know, she bends over or he bends over and they go, wow, nice ass, that is, and gets a horny thought. They're like, oh, I'm such a despicable person. I'm evil and as rags and I've got to flagellate myself and I'm terrible and I can't think that kind of thing and I can't, you know, I'm evil. I'm evil. No. You just say, oh, wow, yeah, okay, and then move on. You just, like, acknowledge it and then move on. The problem with suppressing this kind of thing, when you say, wow, they're attractive, right, is that if you suppress it and you go, no, I can't think that, the brain will just keep bringing it up, right? You'll get obsessive over it because the brain will go, no, look, it is. You've got to see this. You've got to see this. Then that's sort of what the brain does. If you go, yeah, that's hot. That's hot. And, you know, but that's okay. I'm working with her. You know, she's still my friend, a professional, you know, and I've got to acknowledge that. As long as you address it and acknowledge it in your brain and not obsess over it, you'll be fine. You can say, hey, yeah, Mary's my friend. I work with her. She's incredibly hot, but hey, I'm married, you know. It's fine. And, you know, if my wife goes, wow, Chris Hemsworth, he is hot as fuck, I'd say, I sure, yeah, probably, yeah, sure, okay. It's not something to beat yourself up about. We should be judging people on their actions, not on their thoughts, because everybody sees somebody and has a sexual reaction to it. That's just human nature. The problem comes when you name it evil and try to suppress it, because the brain, when suppressing thoughts, that is the very thing that will come up again and again and again. It will just keep bringing it up. So these people are contributing to their own problems by refusing to acknowledge their humanity. It's just a human thing. And even if you are married, we're going to see another person, be attracted, and then go, well, I'm married and I love my wife. There's a much deeper connection there. But it's okay if you feel attracted to other people, because I'm attracted to my wife. That's okay. But I don't love other people. I don't have to act on it, right? I just have to acknowledge that that's a emotion that came up because I am human. And it's okay. Be kind to yourself. Just go, yeah, okay. But it does not change that you've got a job to do. That person deserves respect and you need to be a professional. It doesn't change that at all. So go do your job. And if you're a single guy and you want to have a fantasy, go for it. It's no big deal. Just carry out, still be professional, still be respectful, still, you know, you do your job, right? There's no excuse for, you know, but a lot of guys get into a lot of problems by trying to repress and squash down those feelings. Those feelings are never squashed down, never squashed. They never go away. They will just keep bubbling back to the surface. Same as any feeling, any psychologist. And don't get me wrong, I'm not a psychologist, but any psychologist will tell you, in trying to suppress emotions, they will come back with twice the force. And I believe, and this is just my opinion, I believe that that's the problem this guy has, that he is tormented in these circumstances because he is obsessing over it. And the reason why he's obsessing over it is because he's trying to suppress a natural emotion instead of acknowledging it and moving on. Just moving on. Like, dude, I got shit to do. I can't obsess over a woman. Like, I'm sorry, I just can't. You know, this is the thing I've once said. I don't understand stalkers because, you know, I got shit to do. I don't have time to obsess over some woman and think about her. I'm sorry, I got shit to do. You know, I will notice if a woman's attractive, but I got shit to do. There's things I have to do. I got to get on with my life. And it's okay. It's okay. Wow, Lil. That's the kind of thing that will get you arrested in this guy's Protestant utopia. Pretty well hung. Yeah, wow. Wow. So you know, a weird thing about English? A weird thing about English is that people are hanged, right? There's two terms, hanged and hung, right? And what's the difference between them? Because they're both past tense. If you want to use that correctly, Jesus was hanged, right? And what's the difference between them? This is how stupid English is. The difference between them is when something's hanged, it's alive, right? So when you send someone to the gallows for an execution, they're hanged. When you have a painting or a dead carcass of a pig or something, when you put that on a meat hook, it's hung, right? So the past tense is dependent on whether something is alive or dead, which is just wild. So hanged is only applied to living things. Wank for peace. Look, and yeah, sometimes, hey, you know, that's probably part of his problem. He can't do that because it's immoral and sinful and stuff. So how are you going to deal with a fantasy if you can't even think about it, if you're not going to... It's going to come back and bite you in the ass, quite frankly. That's my opinion. Look, you may disagree, but that's my opinion. This guy's doing it to himself. It's not the woman doing it, right? He's blaming the woman and saying, oh, they shouldn't be there because I can't control myself. A real, like, and so we're talking about masculinity, a real man in a good state of mind that says, hey, yeah, I'm a man, I find women attractive. That does not mean I have to take any action towards them. And I can acknowledge my attraction to the woman without berating her or demeaning her or in any way, you know, disrespecting her, and go on with the rest of my fucking life not thinking about it again. Okay? That's possible. Look, as an example, I used to be, when I was a lot younger, I used to be friends with a guy who DJ'd at a strip club. Right? He DJ'd at a strip club. He would get us in for free to hang out kind of thing. And I will say this, like for a 20-something-year-old to go, hey, we're going down to this strip club to hang out with it's just wild, right? You're just like, way. And then once you actually... like, you know, and there's women walking around naked, totally chill. And at first you're like, wow, look at all of them. Once you actually talk to them and get to know them, you're not looking at them the same way. You're not saying, oh, this is something to take advantage of. No, that's this person who, you know, she is working, trying to feed her kids and trying to, you know, that's not to say they weren't attractive, but you understand that attraction is simply a surface thing, while your friendship with them and knowing them, it runs a lot deeper. It has a lot more consequence. So, you know, once you talk to these people and share with them their highs, their lows, their hopes, their fears, all of that stuff, it isn't a factor anymore. They're a person with everything that entails. But he doesn't think that women have all the personhood of a man. And so I can tell you right now, these gorgeous women in the strip club, you know, I would never disrespect them in any way, and happy to talk to them about normal stuff. And you don't look at them in the same way. And that really was a wake-up call for me. That, hey, those women are there to be ogled and desired and dripped over and yet when you actually know them, it kind of becomes something that is irrelevant. Like, it's not really cool anymore. I think there must be a level of, I guess, mystery or ignorance about people in order to have that level of, you know, just outright desire for someone just because of their physical attributes. You know, you don't know them. I think that has to be the case. But hey, I mean, they were great girls. I really liked them. They were awesome. You know, they prayed. Look, I told the story of the practical joke one of them played on me. It was pretty humiliating, but it was funny when I look back on it, kind of thing. It was funny.
Go wrong. Golly.
So-
I'd say, come on.
You have a patriarchal view of how society should be.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's certain places that ought to be male-only spaces, and combat is one of them. And being closed up in a submarine is another one. And
Okay, closed up in a submarine, there's no reason why women can't do that. I get that men are generally stronger than women. That's a biological fact due to testosterone, fat to body ratio, and the development of muscles. I get that, okay? But women can do a lot of roles that they're perfectly fine doing. Perfectly fine doing, right? You have a long tradition of women snipers from Russia, and they are incredibly good at what they do. Generally, whether it's by culture or biologically, I would say possibly culturally, women are generally, I'm not saying all women, I'm saying generally, they are more patient and more risk averse, right? And that may just be a cultural thing. It may just be learnt, but that is the case. And I'm not saying that, hey, because you're a woman, you are more patient than all men. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying because you're a man, you're less patient than all women. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying on a general level, women are more patient and they are more risk averse, which is perfect for a sniper role. Patience is the number one thing a sniper needs. That is perfect for a sniper role. And sort of being risk averse is also a great trait for a sniper, because they will be patient, they will time their shot, they will make sure they're not seen. Female snipers generally, and I'm not saying all of them, I'm not making broad categories, I'm saying generally, women make better snipers than men. They just do. Because of these traits. Now, that doesn't mean that women are always the best. It doesn't mean that men are worse snipers in general. It just means that they generally, on a sort of spectrum, make better snipers because guys take too many risks. They're not patient enough. And that's okay. That's okay. But sort of to come back and say, oh, combat is definitely for men, it depends on what type of combat that you're talking about. And nowadays where you're having FPV drones and other robotics on the battlefield, autonomous machines on the battlefield, sort of the idea that men are stronger is kind of irrelevant, like 100% irrelevant. And being patient and being risk averse can actually be very, very helpful in some roles for FPV drones. Having quick reflexes can be useful in some situations for FPV drones, but we don't just eliminate a certain segment of the population because we're like, oh, well, we don't like what they do. No.
And, you know, so what it boils down to is that sort of thing. Egalitarianism has been the basic platform, and feminism is a subset of egalitarianism, and you can't split the difference on this.
Yeah, I wouldn't say a subset. I think that, yeah, maybe. Look, egalitarianism is fine. I don't see the problem with it. Hey, Tori.
So if you're going to have a submarine, you have to make a decision who's going to be on it, right? And either the egalitarian, secular egalitarian worldview will prevail, or a patriarchal Christian worldview will prevail, or a patriarchal Muslim view. You know, somebody's going to have to decide.
But bottom line, do you believe?
Well, sure. Look, and some traits are neurological. Like we have neurological differences in the brain because of the development and the hormones that are released during formation of the brain. And some are just cultural and behavioral. Like, for instance, the idea that women shouldn't be outspoken, that isn't some sort of biological thing. It's not neurological. It is just cultural. It's just a women should be quiet kind of thing. And if they're not, they're bossy. That is just a sort of generalized thing in society that's got no basis in biology. But what we notice in trans people is that there's certain areas near, I can't remember which part of the brain it is, but during formation, it has a tendency, because all of this is a spectrum, right? Like all of it's a spectrum. So generally on a spectrum, trans people's brains will look more like female brains, like cis female biological. I don't like saying biological sex because all of it is biological, but the birth sex, it looks more female than male. Even though their body and their development of their body is male, their brains will, this part of their brain will look more like a female brain. So yeah, we do know there is differences on a spectrum, like, so generally on a spectrum, men's brains will go towards one way and women's brains will go towards the other. But that doesn't mean they're not suitable for combat. That doesn't mean they're not suitable for all kinds of roles. It just means they're slightly different. And it also validates the idea that you can have a male body and have a female, what for all intents and purposes seems like a female brain inside of it. Pretty wild. Pretty wild.
Men and women are equal in society.
Well, they are in our society, but they're not equal in the world.
What do you mean by that?
Because men and women are different. They're just different.
Well, what we're talking about is having equal rights and equal power over your circumstance. So what Doug doesn't believe in is women voting, right? He doesn't want women to vote. He doesn't want women to have jobs. He wants them to sit home and make babies. And that isn't equality, right? Like, that isn't having equal roles in the world, because then you have the men with the say over what legislation goes in, how the world is run, and women having no say, which used to be the case.
So when I said I don't want women in combat, it's not an arbitrary rule. It's not like we want the women to stand on this side of the room and the men to stand on that side. There's certain things that men do better than women do. There's certain things that women do better than the men do. And I think we should let Scripture and natural revelation tell.
Why Scripture? Why Scripture? Why should we not get the best people for each role rather than go, well, Scripture says that women shouldn't do this, so we don't do it? Like, why is Scripture coming into this? This is his Christian utopia. He's not basing it on outcomes, on consequences, on merit, or how, who has the better capacity to do things. He's basing it upon his religious belief, and this is the problem.
Which is which. Men are good at smashing and breaking things. They're good at fighting. And when you have this...
Well, not all men. Not all men are good at fighting, nor do they have to be. That's the thing. Like, we don't have to have this, well, men are going to fight and women are going to do this. No, we don't have to do that. We should be aligning the people, not the men, not the women, the people that we need to the doctrines that the warfare is requiring. And at the moment, with the age of drones and remote warfare, it doesn't mean shit that you're a man who likes breaking things. In fact, that's probably a detriment in today's sort of FPV drone-centered theaters. Why would we want that?
Egalitarian dogma that women and men have to be the same. What happens is it's like saying...
No one's saying they have to be the same. No one's saying they have to be the same. What we're talking about is an equality of rights. So if I have the right to vote, they have the right to vote. If I have the right to bodily autonomy, they have the right to bodily autonomy. If I have the right to protest or raise my voice, they have the right to it's not us being the same. No one's saying that. And this is where Doug sort of lies to his congregation and people and other Christians and sort of says, well, they want everyone the same. They want to turn males into females, females into males, and they want everybody to be the same. No, nobody is saying that. Literally nobody. But there's some realities that we have to deal with. And but we do want equal rights for people.
Everybody has to be able to dunk the basketball. If you've got an egalitarian...
No one is saying that. Nobody is saying that. But what we want to do is say, if you show capacity as a soldier, as a woman, you at least get the opportunity to do that.
Dogma that says everyone has to be able to dunk. The only thing you're going to wind up doing is lowering the net. And so consequently, you've got firemen, one of the things that Pete Hegseth has done is, instead of making a regulation concerning the women, he just said, we're back to a uniform standard of fitness for going into certain avenues, certain places. And that de facto is going to exclude many of the women. Right?
But do you think the underlying premise was what you're saying? Women shouldn't be in combat.
Correct.
our viewers might hear that and think he wants to turn this into a totalitarian, patriarchal society. He wants to turn America into Gilead with handmaids.
Right.
What do you say to that?
What I want to do is keep women out of submarines, which is not totalitarianism.
Yeah, but here's where and this is what I was talking about earlier, the way he skirts the line. He says, oh, I just want to keep them out of submarines. But that's not all he wants. He wants to keep them out of any combat whatsoever. He wants them to not be able to vote. It's not just, oh, but I want to keep them out of submarines. No, that is not his intention. And he is being really dishonest by sort of saying, oh, I just want to keep them out of submarines. Number one, if there's a submariner who's a woman, hey, all more power to her. I love it. Go for it. I don't care. Like, seriously, if there's horny men on board a ship, there's horny women on board a ship. Like, this is the kind of guy that thinks that women don't have desires. Like, they're just these chaste angels that never get attracted to men. Like, seriously, my guy, you are in for a shock. If you come to Australia, you are in for a shock, my guy.
That's one example.
Right. It's you've got to decide which way you're going to go. So, for example, when you send Bruno into shower with the junior high girls, and you force that on them, and you arrest parents who
yeah. So then he goes to trans issues, right? Like, he just basically, it's a Mott and Bailey. He's basically going, we should take rights away from women, and then retreating to the, well, you know, trans girls are going to be in with the girls, and I don't like it. It's completely changing the subject.
Protest at the school board meeting, I would call that totalitarian. And what I'm trying to, I'm not fond of quoting Vladimir Lenin positively, but he once said, whom? Mm-hmm. Who's doing what to whom? So when someone says, oh, you're imposing on the woman who wants to be a fighter pilot or who wants to be a submariner, you're imposing on her. I say yes, but what you're doing is imposing on other people. Mm-hmm. You're imposing your worldview on other people. There's no.
Yeah, so what we're doing is saying, if you are causing harm to people, we're going to just stop that. Regardless of your religion, regardless of whatever. We're not saying, hey, because you're a Christian, we're going to take away your rights that we still retain, right? Which is what you're doing. You're doing basically saying, because I'm a Christian, I'm going to have the right to protest. I'm going to have the right to put a member of parliament in. I'm going to have the right to do all of these things that you won't have, right? But we're not doing that. We're saying, hey, no one has the right to take away people's autonomy with no good reason. Nobody has the right to declare that person be oppressed unless they're harming somebody. And they're not. You haven't actually demonstrated they're harming anybody. You're just sort of saying, well, I don't like it.
So you see it, they can't coexist.
There's no way that antithetical worldviews can exist without one imposing on the other.
But why isn't it enough to have?
Well, yes, there is. But you've got to acknowledge first that you need a good reason, not just a religious one, in order to implement something. So if we say, hey, we're going to take away and basically restrict people's ability to go out of house because there is a pandemic on, is different than, well, my religion says that you shouldn't come out of your house, right? Those are two totally different things. One of them has consequences of not doing it, and the other one is arbitrary based upon your religious belief. And we're just saying, hey, we should do it because there are bad consequences, not because my God said so.
Have this community here in Moscow. You've built this Christian community. Why isn't it enough to just live that way and let everyone else live the way they want in America?
Oh, we're happy to live that way as long as they let us, right? But it's not going to shake out that way.
What do you mean?
It's got to give at some point, right? So here's an example. The logic of egalitarianism means that our daughters are going to be drafted at some point to go fight in some stupid foreign war.
So you see the.
Well, I'm against the draft all in all. The only time I see that our government would do the draft is if Australia was being attacked directly, like someone was invading, which I don't see possible. But if someone is invading, right, and you draft the population, to be honest with you, if you're a woman in a country under invasion, if you're anybody, man or woman in a country under invasion, the safest place is probably going to be in the military. Civilians do not get an exemption from the invading army. They don't go, well, you're a civilian, we're not going to do anything to you. Ideally, that's what the Geneva Convention says, but that's generally not what happens in warfare. So I really think that, and hey, I'm not opposed to a draft between people, but I will say that a draft should only be implemented as an absolute last resort if your country is literally being invaded. I mean, that's a little contentious, I get it. And, a lot of people would object to that. I get it. But, that's the idea, that it's there to save your country. I don't agree with a draft for a foreign war. I think that's absolutely ridiculous.
A slippery slope.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I've lived on this slippery slope my entire life.
But other people might say, well, there's a slippery slope with your view that women's rights are just gradually taken away, for example.
Sure, but the slippery slope that I'm talking about is the one that we're actually sliding down. So the thing
you don't think they're sliding down your slippery slope?
No, I don't. Now, I do.
Wow. So he's actively working to take away rights from women, points out some nebulous concept that, hey, if ever there's a draft, women could be drafted alongside men as this thing that's definitely going to happen. I will point out it has been Trump and the religious right that have been starting all the wars, right? Let's face it, Bush was a Christian. Trump's a Christian. Well, I mean, he says he's a Christian. I don't know, but hey, let's say he is. And, he's sort of saying, well, secularism, it's going to have wars and they're going to draft the women. That's not a slippery slope to him, while he's working towards taking away vote for women, but he's saying that's a slippery slope, it won't happen. But you are working towards it. We're not working towards having a war where we draft women. That's not what we're working towards. We want a peaceful world where we're being peaceful and there is no draft men or women, right? He's the one that's working towards this, so it's not so much a slippery slope as a fucking goal.
Let's put it this way. I do believe that there have been instantiations of Christianity in politics that have gone very badly.
Like what?
Spanish Inquisition, or there are things like that I think, okay, that's.
Oh, that's the only one. Not all of the genocides, the attacks on Jews in the Crusades, like all of the horrendous stuff, the wars between Protestants and Catholics. Oh yeah, it's that one. It's the Inquisition. Right.
That's no good, and we should never do that again. I'm an advocate of Christendom, but the first Christendom had some warts. That had some things that we don't ever want to do again. So there are slippery slopes on the Christian side of things, and I think we should guard against those things. But right now, that's not anywhere close to being our central problem.
You basically think you're David and Goliath.
Yeah.
So over my shoulder right here, there is a poster of the cover of a book, and it says, "It's good to be a man."
Right.
What does that mean?
It means that that book is an argument that is
It's good to be the king, right? It's good to be a man. It's good to be in power. It's good to be in charge. Insecure men, like if you're not in power, then you're worthless. I really have problems with this whole interpretation of masculinity as power. It's bloody terrible. It's absolutely terrible. And that's basically what he's all about. He has his side. It's the men. They should be in charge. They should have power over women. It's absolutely disgusting.
Defensive reaction, defending young men who don't know who they are because they have been taught their entire life that white heterosexual males are cancerous.
Yeah, I don't think they've been taught that. I think that so it gets complicated. Basically, that for a long time there was a type of masculinity where men could not express the negative emotions around fear, around sadness, around depression, around all of these things, like negative emotions. The only negative emotion that was acceptable was anger. And these guys are tapping into that anger and using it in order to say, well, if you put your value in Jesus, Jesus will give you value and it'll solve all your problems. Problem is that it doesn't. They're still angry. They're just reframing it as a righteous anger on behalf of Jesus. But sort of the whole idea of a man that stomps down on others in order to have self-worth is catastrophic. Just catastrophic. I, as a man, define myself by who I lift up, not who I stomp down. It's absolutely shocking behavior, but they're sort of appealing to these very angry men who do feel ostracized by society. But I think we need to listen more to them and really get them to open up about how they feel without, calling them a pussy or degrading them, saying, "Oh, you're not a real man if you feel hopeless and you're sad." I think it's important to acknowledge that they can be just as much a man with tears in your eyes as a gun in your hand. Okay, that's important.
So masculinity is tagged as toxic masculinity. If a boy acts like a boy in school, we hit him in the head with a chemical rock. We don't, because we don't know how to discipline.
No, we don't. No, we don't. No, if the boy's being a boy in school, it depends what he's doing, but a lot of it is basically harming other people is the toxicity of it, the harm of others. So toxic masculinity to me is defined by its willingness to harm others in order to support and buttress your own masculinity, right? Which is a problem because it causes a lot of harm. But we don't hit them in the head with a chemical rock. I don't know if this guy's high or what. I have no idea, but that's not what we do.
Them. We don't know how to make boys stand up straight. We don't know how to make them work hard. We don't know how to train boys as boys who are going to become men. One of the books that I wrote was called Future Men, because boyhood should be aimed at manhood, and boys and girls are not the same, and so you have to train them. You have to train girls to be women, and you have to train boys to be men. And if you don't do that, and you spend your time attacking boys for masculine traits, they're gonna grow up to be pretty screwed up. And
right now, a lot of people believe that there's a masculine.
Yeah, I hate to break it to you, but those religious fundamentalist men that are just filled with anger that's been redirected at women are pretty screwed up. Right? Like getting Jesus on your heart and sort of going through the motions of, well, I hate all non-Christians because Jesus is my guy, and feeling powerful doesn't actually solve their problems. Right? They still don't have a girlfriend. They still don't know how to relate and express what they feel. Because being part of this toxic masculine church thing, it doesn't actually allow them to express their feelings unless it's love of Jesus kind of thing. And that's the viewpoint that they put everything through. But they seem to be weaponizing the hatred of these young men in order to fight for Jesus. And it's really worrying, because fighting for Jesus and being aggressive and obnoxious and horrible and, just toxic for Jesus is not going to solve the problems that are currently in your life. It may help a bit with the ability to connect to people, but it won't help with that underlying feeling of sadness and unhappiness and depression and all of these things which really is men are struggling with. It's not going to help. And I think part of the reason is that they've been taught that by these people that their value comes from power, from looks, from how successful you are, from all of these things that has nothing to do with being a man. Nothing to do with it. Nothing to do with my ideas of masculinity, I'll tell you that right now.
Masculinity crisis in the United States, just when you look at the data of, school test scores, graduation rates, that kind of thing, are you seeing
absolutely
more men be drawn to your church right now?
Yes. One of the things that is attractive to many of the people who have come here is that we're not apologetic about the masculinity that is present here. Now, neither are we apologetic for the femininity, but then as soon as you say masculinity, femininity, people say you're stereotyping. You're saying men are like this and women are like that. And I'd say, yep, we're stereotyping.
Well, no, I think they're broad sociological concepts. I think that they can be interpreted many different ways and things like that. But the thing that is going to happen is that you're going to get all of these young men who have been promised a masculine utopia by this guy. Most women, or overwhelming amount of women, are not going to be on board, so it's not going to happen, and they're just going to be frustrated. They're going to be frustrated because they were promised that, hey, if you get on board with Jesus, all of your problems will be solved. And you're still just a frustrated guy who's never addressed anything beyond, I hate all of these things. The question is, what is causing those feelings? What's the problem deep down? And they never get to that point through the church, because the church says, well, you suck, you're evil, you're horrible, you're rags, but Jesus loves you, so take heart. That doesn't address the problem.
Guilty.
So what does that mean? What role do you think women play in society?
Women are the kind of people that people come out of.
So you just think they're meant to have babies. That's
well,
it. They're just a vessel.
No, it is.
Women are the type of people that people come out of. This is his attitude towards women's role in society. Now, he skirts this, and like at the start, I sort of said, watch how he talks really carefully, not to let the mask slip off. But this is what he is aiming for. This is what he's after. Women sitting at home, making babies, taking care of the house, while men go out and do all the work. That's what he's after.
It doesn't take any talent to simply reproduce biologically. The wife and mother, who is the chief executive of the home, is entrusted with 3 or 4 or 5.
Entrusted by whom? Entrusted by the man. So he claims to have, oh, well, I think that men and women have equal rights, but they don't under his system. He wants to go back to the days where the woman got married, she stayed with the man no matter what he did. They're bound together, and she just obeys. It's absolutely ridiculous. And I don't know what women are supporting this. It is ridiculous to see women supporting this, because every person is a stakeholder in the country, right? Everybody has a stake in how the country goes. It's going to affect everybody. But he doesn't think that women should be allowed to vote or hold jobs or do any of this stuff. So he's being very cautious, but it's evident what he actually believes. He just is trying to say, hey, we'll just change this one thing. And what he's doing is shifting that Overton window. He's saying, okay, well, we'll just, sort of infringe on women's ability to vote. We're not talking about taking away their ability to vote. And he shifts it. And then, he'll say, oh, well, we're just talking about stopping unmarried women from voting. That's all. Unmarried women, they shouldn't be allowed to vote. They don't know what they're doing because... And they shift it. And then they shift it and they shift it. And this is how they've been working towards this current nightmare that we're currently going through, where wars are just breaking out and, armed agents are roaming the land and just... Yeah, this is what they've been working towards, and they shift it ever so slightly. So he is basically using a little tactic of sort of boiling a frog, right? You put a frog in the boil, it doesn't notice how hot it's getting. It's so slow, it doesn't notice until it expires. And this is what he's doing.
Eternal souls.
I'm here as a working journalist, and I'm a mom of 3.
Good for you.
Is that an issue
No.
for you?
No, it's not automatically an issue.
So, in your...
It's not automatically an issue, but it's an issue, right? He doesn't, it's not what he says, it's what he doesn't say. Because he doesn't say, no, it's not an issue. He says, no, it's not automatically an issue, right? But if you're a progressive woman who enjoys her career and doesn't want to vote the same way as her husband and has raised 3 kids, then no, you don't get a vote. It's an issue then. It's interesting.
View of a Christian nation, a Christian America, would this be acceptable that I'm here as a working mom in Idaho?
Sure. Wouldn't
Okay.
be.
Okay.
Sure. This is the thing. There's a difference between what's a sin and a crime. Okay. So in every society, there's certain things that just you don't let people do it. All right. It's a crime. It's against the law. Then there are things that I would advise people not to do pastorally. It'd be pastoral advice. It wouldn't be a law. It wouldn't be a rule. So, for example, if you have women who are domestic, talented, educated, and high-powered, and I'm related to a number of those, right? So my wife has written 8 or 9 books, and my daughters have written books. Both my daughters have written books. One daughter has edited an English curriculum, English lit curriculum, and they are a mother of 5 and a mother of 8, and they are full tilt domestic, and they are high energy, talented people. I would say go team, go. That's wonderful. At the same time, I don't want to disparage women who want to spend their time in the home, just focusing.
Nobody does that. Nobody does that anyway. Like you're really describing how the world is at the moment. That you can be a Christian and a high-powered wife and, have a job and do all of these things. But he's spoken out against this, and this is the problem. He's kind of going, oh yeah, we'll allow that, but it's a sin in the church. If your church is in charge of the government, how long before that sin becomes against the law, right? Because when you have an established religion, it's not just a sin should be enforceable by the law. The lines blur. And we know this from every single time a state religion has been set up. He might say at the moment, oh, well, it's a sin, but not a law. Laws change. And if you put a church in charge of making laws, you better bet your butt that those laws will reflect what is sinful and what is not sinful.
On focusing, I don't want to backhand it or disparage it at all. I want to honor that.
I want to honor that.
I want to honor that.
But you're comfortable with a working mom leaving the home?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm a woman sitting across from you. Do you view me as an equal?
Oh, equal what? Equal person? Absolutely.
As an equal person with equal rights.
Equal person. So equal person, equal equality of citizenship. I would say, well, if you're a citizen.
Okay, so usually when someone is there and they say, well, I'm a woman, you're a man, you're sitting opposite me, do you see me as an equal person? And he says, what's an equal person? What do you mean by equal? And she says, equal rights. Yes, equal rights. And he is not. If you don't immediately say yes, then your answer is no. No, you don't see her as having equal rights. You don't see her as having equal rights as a person as you, which is inherently an unfair system. Now, you might be fine with an unfair system, but it is an unfair system where one individual has rights that the other doesn't have because they were born a certain way, because they were born a woman instead of a man.
Then there would be equality. But yes, God has created, in the first chapter of Genesis, male and female created he them. In the image of God, he created them. So man and woman complement one another and together represent the image of God. So, and that's...
but you don't believe husband and wife are equals.
Well, I don't think they have equal roles. So,
but do they have equal rights? He's not... So, again, it's interesting what he doesn't say. Because he doesn't say, yes, husband and wife have equal rights. He won't say that because he doesn't believe it. But see how careful he is to try and circumvent that answer and say, well, they don't have equal roles. Well, no one's saying that. But what we're talking about is equal rights. So if I have the right to freedom of speech, so does my wife. If I have the right to vote, so does my wife. If I have the right to choose what happens to my body, so does my wife. But he doesn't believe that.
But it's like asking, which is more equal, the violin or the bow?
No, that is not the same thing. That is not the same thing. That's a false analogy is what that is. Because we're not saying do men and women have equal roles within society. We're not saying that. We're saying, do they have equal rights? The right to choose your job, the right to go out and protest, the right to influence the government, the right to representation, the right to life, liberty, property, that kind of stuff. That's what we're asking. But he's circumventing it by going, oh, it's like it's comparing apples and oranges. No, it's not. Right? We're basically saying, I'm trying to draw it into his analogy, but it's just because, musical instruments don't have rights. But it's kind of like saying, will those instruments be treated with the same amount of care? We're not saying they're treated the same. Gotcha. But will they be treated with the same amount of care? And he's avoiding the question and saying, well, it doesn't make sense. It's apples and oranges. No, it's not. No, it absolutely isn't. And that's sort of the really, really dodgy thing about this guy.
I say the violin or the bow, they're one instrument. The violin and bow is one instrument.
Right, but from what I've read about you and your interviews, you have said that you believe the wife should be submissive to the husband, and therefore that would be equal if the wife is submissive to the husband.
Well, it wouldn't be, for example, if you...
You know, and I just have to say, I love how this reporter is pressing the issue. I do, you know, he's getting these outs, but at the same time, he's one of those slippery people like Kent Hovind, just a real slippery guy. And, you know, really listen to what he's not saying and whether he's actually answering the question. Because she's saying, hey, you believe in submissiveness. In that case, her right to autonomy is directly reliant on the man allowing it, right? Like that absolutely is the case under his worldview. So they don't have equal rights, but he doesn't want to say it because it's so deeply unpopular. And don't forget, he wants to convince people to come over to his side. Saying the truth and saying things outright and plainly and letting people understand where you're actually coming from isn't a part of that equation. So basically, he is blaming all the problems of society on secularism, atheists, trans people, gay people, all of these marginalized groups, and not saying the world in which he is envisioning. He is basically coating it to make it acceptable, to get it into power, and then comes the weapons, then comes the crackdowns, then comes the heresy laws, then comes the oppression. You know, he calls himself a nationalist, but that is a fascist play. You get acceptance, you get power, and then you use violence to establish yourself and crack down on anybody that disagrees with you.
At CNN, you've got bosses all the way up, and you make a distinction, as you ought to, between your equality with them as a human being and the fact that they happen to have authority over you in this job. Okay, so...
Yeah, but marriage isn't a job, my guy. Marriage isn't a job. And you still haven't answered whether they have equal rights. Because, yeah, we would say you have equal rights as a human being, and these are those rights, right? And it doesn't matter if your boss is a man or a woman. If I'm working under a woman, I still have to have certain deference in my job to that person. They're in charge of me. They're a supervisor, right? But Doug wouldn't like that arrangement. Do you think this guy would work as a subordinate to a woman? I don't think so. I think he would say, hey, that's not right.
A person can say, my boss is my equal, as human beings are concerned. We should both have a right to a fair trial. We should both have the right to keep and bear arms. We should both have the right to free speech. But when I go into work, he has the right to tell me what to do, and I don't have the right to tell him what to do. So
That's a
Yeah, but at the end of the day, you have autonomy to leave. You can leave your job if you don't like your boss. Whereas this guy doesn't believe in divorce, so you can't leave your husband if you don't like what he says and does.
dynamic you see in marriage.
yeah, within the confines of marriage, the husband is the head, the wife is submissive, his helpmeet. And when you enter into this, it's a believing Christian man and a believing Christian woman, both of whom want that arrangement.
Notice how he said Christian. So that statement completely invalidates Hindu marriages, Buddhist marriages, Muslim marriages, Jewish marriages. It's all Christian, right? So don't, like, this is the stuff that he's not saying. That if he wants to give votes only to a household, and then a marriage in a household, it has to be a married man and woman, and it has to be Christian, he is effectively taking voting away from anybody except for married Christian couples. And so he's just given the vote to Christians. It's insidious, it's this slow burn, it's this gradually eroding away of people's rights until they realize they have none left.
Is the wife the property of the husband, essentially?
No.
Okay.
No. The wife is, as Paul says in Galatians 3:28, in Christ there's neither Jew nor Greek, slave or free, male or female. So in Christ, before God, worshiping God, there's absolute equality between men and women.
Yeah, but what is it actually implemented in the real world? Is there absolutely equality? Because you're saying before God, which means that, yeah, there's equality in Christianity, but screw those Muslims and atheists, you know, like, this is the problem. And it's really fascinating what this guy doesn't say.
But your view is, in the household, the dynamic between a husband and wife, is one of where the wife is submissive to the husband. And what does that look like in practice? Can the wife say no to the husband?
Under certain circumstances, she must say no to her husband. So,
Like what?
So, as I'm fond of telling our
I would be more interested in when the wife cannot say no to her husband, because I think this guy, and maybe fact check me on it, don't take everything I say as, no pun intended, gospel, but I think he said he doesn't believe in marital grape. Like, it just doesn't happen. So I would really be interested to know when the wife does have this, when she can't say no. What can't she say no to, Doug? Because I would have a problem with that.
people, no human authority on earth is absolute. The civil authority is not absolute. It's a true authority, but it's not absolute. There are times when you disobey the magistrate. The authority of the church, pastors and elders, is true human authority, but it's not absolute. There are times when you should leave a church. The authority of a husband is a true authority. There are times when a wife should tell him respectfully to pound sand.
As you well know, there have been claims
Oh, I know.
that you
Yes.
have minimized or sort of brushed under the rug sexual abuse and violence.
Yes, there have been claims of that nature, and I would say, look at them go. Let them say what they say. It's simply false. So we
Helped a pedophile.
Well, I conducted the marriage ceremony, but I did do that. So, but I didn't set them up. I didn't arrange it for it. I didn't all the things you hear.
Oh, you just carried out the marriage. Okay. So you married a pedophile with a younger. Okay. But you didn't set it up, so it's okay. Fucking hell. This guy's a terrible person.
Online that I did in that situation.
So why would you marry off a pedophile?
Because it was legal. He's a professing Christian. The woman he married understood his background, understood what she was.
Okay, so how old was this woman he's talking about? I don't know. I'm not finding a lot of it online. I do, I think that he is of the opinion that, the legal age should be lowered. And it's just, like Robin is saying, they also support child brides. Yes. And it's wild that the lowest ages of marriage in like these conservative state are in the conservative states. Like 14 in some places. It's crazy. No 14-year-old is ready to be married. Like, I'm sorry, they're not. Of marriage, US states. I think it's 18 in Australia. I will check. So 15 in some places. I don't know where that is. Oh my God. All right. That's just wrong, yo. 15 to 17. Hawaii and Kansas are 15. 4 states have no official minimum age but require either parental consent, court approval, or both. California, Mississippi, New Mexico, and Oklahoma. Wow, that's absolutely terrible. That's absolutely terrible. Oh, thanks, Robin. Cheers. Appreciate it. He even told his parole officer that children and family are a very important part of his religion. Dang. Oh, that's ridiculous. So, Katie Travis asked Church Elder Ed Iverson to find her Mr. Right. He specifically set her up with Mr. Sittler, a convicted child molester who wanted children of his own. Okay, that's just ridiculous. Ugh. Oh, that is cringeworthy. All right, that's sickening. Yeah, religious exemptions. There's too many of those.
Getting into, I didn't arrange it. It was not an arranged marriage. It was not pressured. It was nothing like that. But basically, when someone, one of the things that people don't realize is what pastors actually have to deal with. Pastors are helping people.
On homosexuality, I mean, the Bible talked about stoning as punishment.
Right.
Would you endorse punishing someone who is gay in the America you want to be living in?
This brings up another old controversy. King Asa in Israel and King Jehoshaphat, both in modern parlance, they both closed the bathhouses. They shut it down. And they exiled, they said, all done with that, and exiling homosexuals.
I'm sorry. So if somebody has a gay club, you would shut down their club and then exile everybody out of the city. I mean, what are we talking about here? This is ridiculous. But, you know, he's really, really squirrely. And what he says next is horrifying.
Scripture praises both men for doing that, which means that the requirement for the death penalty that does exist in Leviticus, that requirement was not a minimum penalty, but was a maximum penalty, because Scripture praises the kings who didn't execute the homosexuals. They just shut the orgy down. They just shut the party down. So there is latitude in the application of biblical law. There is latitude in how it's applied from the Scripture itself.
So, but
But he's not saying he wouldn't implement that penalty. Like, think about what he's not saying. Instead of saying, no, we would never implement a death penalty for homosexuality, he's saying, well, the minimum penalty isn't the death penalty. But that suggests, because he's not denying it, that the maximum penalty would be. Like if somebody just kept being gay and not stopping and cutting it out, that might be a penalty that they could get. Think about what he's not saying. He's not saying that penalty's off the table. So, you know, it's very, very deceptive, because he's saying, well, the minimum penalty was this in the Bible, so that would be the minimum penalty, and then leaves it. What would be the maximum penalty?
do you see any America and the America you want to be living in where homosexuals are punished?
I think that
Because they've decided that they want to live.
Well, I sort of disagree with that. I don't think they decide any more than I decide I'm straight. Like, I can't just go, well, now I'm gay, I'm just going to decide to do it. That's not a thing. I can't decide to be gay, and gay people can't decide to be straight. That I really dislike that coloring from the journalist. It's probably misspoke, but I still really dislike it.
Freely as a gay person.
Yeah, I would say, yeah, but that
Punished how?
When I first began ministering, just so you understand how the Overton window has moved. When I first began ministering as a Christian minister, I was grown, an adult, and preaching the gospel. Sodomy was a felony in all 50 states. All 50. Now I didn't begin.
And the Supreme Court, I know, stepped in and overturned that because
my point, yeah.
There was the Lawrence ruling.
Correct.
Yeah, but, you know, we're talking about having equal rights for people. So if you have the right to have your religion, get married, enjoy your life, then gay people should as well. Like, this is the thing. They're kind of going, well, gay people are bad with no, what harm are they doing? You can't just go, my religion doesn't like it. You have to point out some kind of harm that they're doing society.
The Supreme Court said that.
Yeah, the whole thing, we are where we are now. My point is that when I began ministering in 1977, in the late 70s and early 80s, and sodomy was a felony in all 50 states, that America of that day was not a totalitarian hellhole.
So you would like...
Yes, but gay people were not doing very well. And there were problems with that, massive problems. It's just sort of ridiculous that he's sort of going, hey, we oppressed people in the past, so hey, why don't we do it again? I mean, Wilson, I could point to, hey, you know, the slaves, the antebellum slaves were back in before the Civil War. You know, it wasn't a totalitarian hellhole. It was for the slaves, and it was for the gay people. Like, that's the thing. Just because you're the one in charge and stomping down with your boot doesn't mean that no one is getting their faces stomped. Holy crap.
America to go back to that.
Yep.
And someone watching this might be like, you want to control behavior in the bedroom?
Well, yeah. Well, I have the advantage of having built my own house, and people like to say that liberals don't care what you do in your bedroom, but the state had opinions about how thick the sheetrock had to be in the bedroom.
That is not what we're talking about. We're not talking about safety guidelines. Like, this is another false analogy. Because when we say what you do in the bedroom, we're talking about we should not have overview of your sexual preference or what you enjoy, or, you know, if you like some sort of kinky stuff, the government shouldn't, you know, come in if it's both consenting adults and no one's being harmed, then they shouldn't come in and tell you that you can't, you know, have some sort of sexual relationship that includes any activity. Nobody's talking about your fucking building of a bedroom. This guy is so dishonest, and see how he is skirting the question by going, well, the government at the moment can tell you how to build a house. So, you know, really, they're telling you how to do the bedroom. That's not what we're talking about, my guy. Like, seriously, and I think he knows that. He is just being dishonest.
How far apart the sheetrock screws had to be, how big the window had to be for egress, and whether or not I could take the mattress off the tag. What do you mean the government doesn't care what happens in the bedroom?
Yeah, we're talking about sex, you moron. Like, seriously, I finding it's hard to believe he is so stupid that when we say what happens in the bedroom, we're not talking about construction standards for houses, and rather the sexual activities that consensual adults are engaging in. Wow. Holy, he can't be that stupid.
Regulate.
And that goes to your sort of libertarian.
That's exactly it.
Your libertarian tendencies. But it sounds like, I mean, what your vision is from the writings of like R.J. Rushdoony, you know, who is a Christian Reconstructionist. Would you call yourself a Christian Reconstructionist?
Maybe small R Reconstruction. I was never a card-carrying member of that, but I read Rushdoony and I read Gary North and I read Bonson and learned an awful lot from them.
Oh, Bonson, yeah, the precepts. Look, this guy's going to be a precept if I look into his philosophy. I guarantee it. I guarantee it.
But I never signed off on the entire project. But
Why? What part did you not sign off on?
Oh, they were kind of an ornery lot and fighting with each other a lot. And I think some of the applications of Old Testament law were too wooden. So I think that you have to budget for the fact that Christ came and transformed the world. So when Christ died, the Old Testament law was crucified with him, and the Old Testament law rose again from the dead with him, but rose again transformed.
And the family, the church, and the civil government buckets, where does the poor fit in helping the poor and the needy and the most vulnerable? Would that be up to the church or the civil government?
It'd be up to families and the church, and I would say as a final safety net, the civil government.
Okay. Because I know R.J. Rushdoony, in many ways, he thought the church should take on that role.
Yes, but for example, in the Old Testament, the civil government, the gleaning laws, for example, where you left part of your field for the poor to glean and get sustenance. That's the sort of thing that the civil government could say, we want you to do that.
Yeah, but that doesn't fit into modern society because, you know, people live in a city and they're not out in fields where they can...
You basically think the civil government should stay out of the business of the family unit that you see as its own sort of enterprise.
The family is the ministry of health, education, and welfare. The church is the ministry of grace and peace, or the ministry of word and sacrament. And the civil government is the ministry of justice.
Do you still believe what you said back in the 90s, that there's a mutual affection between master and slave?
Yeah. Well, yes, it depends on which master and which slave.
Yeah, mutual affection between master and slave. He may not be in favor of slavery, but he's definitely an apologist for it. He minimizes it. He sort of says, hey, there were good things to it. I think that any sort of affection in a power dynamic where somebody owns another person is not really real affection, right? It is the lot of either coercion or outright fear. I don't think that you can have such power over somebody that you own them and they're in fear of their life and have a a an actual loving relationship. I don't think that's possible.
Slave you're talking about. Slavery was overseen and conducted by fallen human beings, and there were horrendous abuses, and there were also people who owned slaves who were decent human beings and didn't.
No, slavery itself is a horrendous thing, and people that own slaves are horrendous. Now, we don't do presentism. We don't sort of judge people in the past by today's morals because they didn't know any better. But we now know that slavery isn't just bad for the slave. It's bad for the master as well. It destroys the lower class, which absolutely annihilates the middle class, and you just have a repressive system with slaves and masters. It's absolute ridiculous.
Mistreat them.
But do you think by even saying that, that's minimizing the just sheer barbarity and brutality of using human beings based on the color of their skin as property?
Yeah, I think that system of chattel slavery was an unbiblical system, and I'm grateful it's gone.
Yeah. I don't think it was unchristian. I think that a lot of Christians, including the KKK, which were famously Christian, used the Bible to support their slavery ideas. I think they absolutely did. So, sort of saying it was unbiblical, I would push back against that. I think that a lot of people did use Bible verses in order to do it. Yeah, I just thank you, Robin. Thank you. That's awesome. That guy's a shocker. And what concerns me is his way of not actually addressing what his goals are. Right? Like, so when you ask me, okay, so what do you envisage as rights between men and women? And I'm like, well, I want them to have equal rights. I want women to have all the rights that men do, and men have all the rights that women do. So bodily autonomy, the right to vote, the right to free speech, the right to religion, the right to all of these things are the same between humans, because I'm a humanist, right? Like, it should be that we all have the same defended rights in a society that the government cannot oppress in order for us to have a happy and flourishing society. However, he will not address that question. He'll say, oh, well, they have different roles. It's not what she asked, and he knows it, because he doesn't think that women should have the same rights that men do. He thinks that women should be subservient to men in the family, so that when that man goes, well, I've made a decision, this is how the family's going to go, she falls into line. And we know from the history of what happened with women over the last century or so has been horrific in terms of silencing, marginalizing, and oppressing the voices of women, so they cannot have any power within society and no choice over what they do and who we go. Like, seriously, this is not the place for it. Yeah. Do I need to get out the band hammer? Don't make me get out the band hammer. Like, seriously. Look, you can be against the actions of Israel and not just be anti-Semitic, but just sort of pointing out bloodlines and stuff is not helping the conversation. Like, really, I would be saying that Israel should stop because there's people in Gaza suffering and people in the West Bank and Lebanon and now Iran suffering. Like, I'm not against Iran necessarily. I don't like the regime, but I don't think that America and Israel should have bombed them. But that doesn't mean I'm against Jewish people either, right? Jewish people are fine. It's just that the state of Israel should not be committing these atrocities. Sorry. Their international law says they are genocides. I do believe that. But that doesn't mean that, the Jewish people should be attacked either. There's plenty of Jews that disagree with what their government is doing, and hey, that's totally fine. And I respect it. The Australian Council of Jews sort of came out and said that they condemn the actions in Gaza, and good on them against the Palestinians. Good on them. Absolutely. It's called being human. Try it sometime. But sort of going into bloodlines and stuff is sort of going into eugenics and sort of making these statements about who is chosen and who is not. We don't do that here. We don't do that here. We just say, hey, they're humans. They should have a right to freedom. They should have a right to live their lives how they want in their land. And that's fine. That should be equal across the board. That's what we're coming from. Yes, Jewish does not equal Israel. Absolutely, Lowell. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, but that's Doug Wilson. And I find it's the interesting part is not what he says, it's what he doesn't say. It's the way that he skirts the questions and sort of says, we're not looking at taking away women's votes, but, because it wouldn't be acceptable. It's like, well, you've already stated your goal is to convince everyone you're right, and your aim is to do these things. That's not a slippery slope. That's a fucking goal. That is literally what he is trying to do. So I'm not saying, hey, if he does these things, then maybe this will happen, maybe this will happen, maybe this will happen. Like you are, if we allow these sins, then, order will break down on this vague, slippery slope of what may happen. I'm saying he is working towards this goal. It would be like he would have a point if I was, okay, Banhammer's in the chat. Banhammer's in the chat. I'm making a call. You've been warned. Banhammer. Bam. See you. Yeah, you were warned. Listen to the moderators or else you're up. But yeah, I think that sort of taking a little bit and then letting people get acclimatized to it and then a little bit. The problem comes that his sort of gallop towards sort of Christian nationalism is not going to solve any of the problems he professes it will, because progressivism is not the cause. A lot of the causes of this stuff is capitalism, which he ignores completely. Just ignores it. A lot of it is sort of this right-wing toxic masculinity where you are judging yourself and your value in virtue of what part of a hierarchy you fall into, rather than your own inherent worth from the way that you fit into society, the actions you take and how you relate to society, right? So if you don't have power and money and you're not stomping on someone's face, then you're worthless. And that's a problem, because when that is taken away and you're told to stop, the frustration is that you feel powerless. And that's why I could be the brokest person in the world. I could be completely, subservient. I would still have my own sense of identity of who I am, what I do, and how I deal with people around me, because it doesn't come from what I'm doing to others or how I relate to it. It comes from my own sense of what is right, what is wrong, helping people, being valuable to my society, to my community, and being a part of that is what gives me value. So someone can say, "Oh, you're a hairless idiot that doesn't even make six figures," and I go, "So I don't care, because that's not where my value comes from." But anyway, I usually don't get into these, manosphere chants. I usually don't get into it because talking with people in that sphere is incredibly fatiguing. I'm glad I did this, even though I do find him sort of fatiguing, because he is really deceptive and will skirt around questions that if you look at what he's not saying, he's not actually denying that he's headed towards all of this stuff. I mean, I know he says it's not a slippery slope if you're aiming for it, which is absolutely what he's doing. So we've got to be aware that when someone says, "Oh, well, we're not doing that at the moment," it doesn't mean they're not trying to get there. It means that they have no capacity under our current system. It's really important, because if you allow them to do the little things they're suggesting in order to, get the Christians happy, they will keep going. There is no stopping that roll once it's started. And not because it's a slippery slope, it's because that's what they're aiming for. Cringosphere. Yeah, I'm sorry, I pronounced it wrong. Anyway, don't forget, be kind to yourself. Look, if you're in a submarine and you're working with a woman and she's hot as fuck, and you go, wow, she's hot, just accept that and then move on. Like, don't try and go, oh, I'm a sinner, I've got to suppress these feelings. Just feel it, acknowledge her as a person, move on, and go, yeah, she's attractive. She's also a great person who's really good at her job. If that is the case, I'm not saying, hey, pretend in any other way, but hey, just move on. That's okay. You can do that. It's very possible. You don't have to have control over women to make you valuable. You don't need it. It's not important. You don't have to have it. It's okay. You can be a valuable member of society that reaches down and helps up people, including women, that treats people with respect, that treats people as equals and gives them equal rights, and still have value. Even though you have no money, have no car, have no wife, have no anything else, you don't believe in God, you can still do that. It is possible because, hey, I'm doing it now. But anyway, be kind to yourself, be kind to each other. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye, everybody.
To what new horizons can we look now? Where are tomorrow's opportunities? The frontiers of the future are not on any map. But now, what's ahead of us?